Hello! Welcome back. It continues. Let me change the music. We're back! I was watching some interviews during the starting soon screen of Robert Pattinson and Bong Joon-ho, who made the movie Parasite, the Korean movie that won the Oscar. And apparently his new movie's coming out starring Robert Pattinson, and I had no idea. It's called Mickey 17, and apparently it's coming out in 2 days, so I'm excited to watch it. Because he's an amazing director and screenplay writer. I don't know what to call it for gore. But yeah, apparently the new movie is coming out in 2 days, so I'm pretty excited because Robert Pattinson's a great actor. Love him! And Bong Joon-ho is a great director, so hopefully it'll be good. I read the summary and it looks interesting. And apparently everyone in the cast has like a little plushie of the creatures in the in the movie. It's so cute. Wait, let me show y'all. Can't get over how fucked up Miss Cobell is. Oh my god, guy. It like gets worse. I'm just telling you now because it's like not really a spoiler. In terms of like, it's not what she does, but like increasingly over season 1 and then into season 2, you're like, she might actually just be insane. It's like, there's just something deeply like wrong with her. It's not even like her loyalty to the company, I think. Like, she genuinely is just a disturbed person. And the actress is so good. Because I watched her Hot Ones. Is it Hot Ones? The like chicken interview. I watched her Hot Ones interview with Adam Scott, the actor for Mark S. I forgot his name for a second because their last names are similar. Cause in the show his name's Mark Scout, but then the actor's name is Adam Scott, so I was like, Scott Scout? Anyway, I watched her Hot Ones interview with Adam Scout. So, Scott, oh my god, I just mixed it up. So Mark and Miss Cobell's like actress and actors doing the Hot Ones interview, and she is literally like such a cheerful person. Like she like does not stop laughing the whole interview. It's so good. Maybe we can watch it if we have enough time. But like, she's so different from Miss Cobell. I was like, wow, she's a phenomenal actor. Just stopping by to say I have a good stream. I still haven't watched the show, so I'm covering my eyes and ears. Have a good one. I hope you enjoy it when you watch it. Yeah, Mickey 17 looks really interesting. I can't wait to watch it. I've been wanting to have like a new movie sometime. Cause the other movie I wanted to watch is Naza, I think. I don't know how they pronounce it in Chinese. But it's like the biggest animated film. And it's been sold out for like 3 weeks at my theater, so I haven't been able to watch it. So I'm waiting for like the hype to die down so I can watch it. But it's like the largest grossing animated film right now, maybe? Did it? No, it's like almost beating... It beat Lion King. But I don't know if it's #1 right now. But apparently, this might be misinformation. My dad told me. But apparently the movie series, the animated movie series was made by this guy that just like had nothing going for him and like gave up on his career and everything and just like focused on like animating this movie. he put like all his eggs into this basket and it worked out. So hey, shoot for your dreams. But yeah, the Mickey 17 cast, I saw this photo and they all have like these little plushies of the little creatures in the movie that they call creepers, like in Minecraft. It's really cute though. Look, they all have this little plushie. This one has a bandana. It's so cute. That's so awesome. Being on like a cast and you all get matching plushies with each other. Come on. Anyways. But yeah, Miss Cobell's actress is phenomenal. Because in her Hot Ones interview, like, it was non-stop, like, giggling. Like, she was just laughing so much. And I was like, wow, that is not Miss Cobell at all. She's really good. And she's so scary in the show. Like, she has these little moments of, like, really angry outbursts. Which, it's, like, scarier because of the fact that Miss Cobell is such a composed person. Like, nothing seems to bother her. So when she, like, suddenly lashes out and starts, like, screaming, you're like, oh my god. But yeah, we're gonna be continuing the yap now. Let me open the episode list so I can guide myself. Oh, what episode are we on? 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we just finished 6. Because we have 3 episodes left. Is it this one? Did we finish this episode? Hold on. I'll just recap the last episode we did really quickly, just as a refresher. But last episode that I recapped was episode 6. And hopefully, no one comes in and disrupts our yap session again. Okay, so last time we left off at episode 6. So just real quick, Miss Cobell had Petey's Severance chip, remember? She makes it into a necklace and puts it on. And then she gets a call from the security. And the security is like, hey, the data from the chip, I got the name of the hacker. The hacker's name is Ragabi, which is the ex-employee at Lumen, remember? And then he's like, oh, I'll find her. And then Cobell hangs up and is like, alright. And then she like prays to Kier, which is the CEO of Lumen, if you guys don't remember. Kier Egan. I don't know why, but they see him as a religious figure. So she starts praying to him. She's like, oh. I forgot about that. That was crazy. So then, Mark retrieves Petey's phone from his basement, puts the battery back in, he sees all the missed calls, he pulls out of the driveway, drives down the street, and then, normal thing to do, right? Yep. At Lumen. Oh wait, no, he took the battery out first, so then he takes the battery out, throws the battery into a trash can, and then throws Petey's phone into the trash can. He's like, I want nothing to do with this. And then, Bert and Irving have their whole little showmance going on, romance. And Bert welcomes Irving into the plant room, and Bert is like, I found it a while ago. It's so beautiful. I come here alone sometimes, and I just wanted to show it to you. And Irving's like, wow, that's lovely, Bert. And then, Irving's like, it could be our secret place to, like, meet up and stuff. And then Irving is relieved to have a place where they can, like, be alone. And then, Bert ends up holding Irving's hand again, and he's like, is it okay? And Irving's like, yes, it is. It's so cute. They're like, it's like very old people romantic. Like, is this okay? It's like, yes, I suppose it is. So cute. And then says it's okay, and then yeah, Bert is like, well, the handbook doesn't say anything about like you can't kiss each other. And then Irving's like, no, but the handbook still discourages romantic fraternization, so we shouldn't do it. And then, hi, new avatar. I always had it, I just never used it. Because PNG is so much easier. And, yeah, Irving's like, oh, but romantic I can't say the word, fraternization is not allowed. And Bert's like, oh, then it's fine as long as it's not romantic. And then they're like, ha 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 ha. And Irving's like, yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm just not ready for a relationship yet. And then Bert's like, that's fine, but can you stay in the like plant room with me for a bit longer? He's like, okay. And then we skip the scene to Devin, Mark's sister. And remember when she went on a walk and then she saw that like lady at the birth retreat, and she's like, oh, hi Gabby. And then Gabby doesn't recognize her at all. We talked about that last stream, so it was like Gabby's severed self that like gave birth, which is so insane. I had a talk with my friend after the stream. I was like, how sad is that? Like your lifespan is like a total of what? Like 12 hours, and all you do is give birth. It's so sad. Anyway, so Gabby doesn't recognize her, and Devin is like, but we met at the retreat, right? And Gabby's like, yeah, sure, whatever. She's just like really weird about it. And Devin's like, oh, beautiful baby. Your baby does look like a William. Because she was like, oh, I'm gonna name him William. And then Gabby is like, no, his name's Bradley. And Devin's like, what? Why'd you name your baby something different? Anyways, conversation is interrupted by Gabby's husband, Angelo. And Angelo's like, oh, okay, cool. And as they walk away, Angelo calls for like their other two children, and then Devin's just like, what the hell just happened? Anyways, Mark continues to read the self-help book that Rickon wrote that like accidentally ended up at Lumen because Miss Cobell took the book from his porch and then brought it to Lumen. So it's like Mark is reading the book now. And he's like, wow, this is incredible. And the book is called The UUR, I think. The UUR, I didn't mention it last time, but it's very like self-help, deep philosophy, whatever. And then Irving tells Dylan, Helly, and Mark that he wants to return to O&D immediately, all of them, because he wants to unite them as departments, the way that Kier intended, their mighty god. And Mark is like, Irving, what are the O&D people making? And then Irving's like, I don't know what they're making. And then Dylan is like, I bet they're making clubs that they use to kill the baby goats with. Because remember Helly R and Mark S like stumbled upon that really weird room with like the baby goats inside. Anyways, and then Helling from Ranking of Kings. I got her name mixed up. Helly agrees with Irving's like, yeah, we should go to O&D. Hi, Tex! He's back in case someone shows up. Again, something about this show's got people going crazy. So yeah, Helly's like, yeah, I agree with Irving. We should go back to O&D. And once they've mapped the floor, Irving is like, I don't approve of this. Like, why are you guys making a map of the floor? That's against the rules. Even though, like, he's already broken several rules at this point. So it's like, whatever. But I guess he's, like, clinging on to, like, some semblance of, he's like, I'm still trying to do the right thing. I'm a good worker. But yeah. So then Irving's like, I don't approve of this. And then Helly is like, should we go on another mental health walk? And then Mark is like, nah, we still have a lot of work to do. Yeah, they all broke rules by now. They're all doomed. Insert Prowler thing from Spider-Verse. Exactly. And then Mark is like, oh, we still have a lot of work to do. And then Helly like jokes around with Mark, and then it's like, okay, back to work. And then Dylan is like, yo, what the hell? Because he's like starting to sense this like weird chemistry between Mark and Helly. Because they got like closer with each other after they like fought and then like went on that walk, you know, and then like found the baby goats. So Dylan's like, the hell? And then Dylan like peeks over his cubicle at Mark. And Dylan's like, Mark, are you and Helly fraternizing too? Like Irving and Bert? And Mark is like, what? No. And then before the conversation can continue, oh yeah, but while they're like talking, Dylan is like, I bet baby goats was code for something else. And then Mark is like, what? What would baby goats be code for? And Dylan's like, I bet you guys didn't actually see baby goats. I bet you were doing something else. And Mark is like, you think baby goats is code for sex? And Dylan's like, yes. And Mark is like, no, we did not do that. And then around that time, Milchick walks in. Dylan's like, I'm so lonely. And Mr. Milchick walks in. Mr. Milchick's like, hi everyone, what are you all talking about? That's how he talks, by the way. He's like, hello everyone, what are you all talking about? And then they're like, we were talking about Miss Casey. And then Mark is like, oh yeah, where is Miss Casey? And then Miss Cobell is like there, and then Miss Cobell is like, well, part-time innies may not be as sophisticated as you are, Mark, but they still need to be held accountable for their actions. Miss Casey was supposed to supervise Helly, and she failed. And so, remember Miss Casey got punished for, like, the other people leaving, even though she got, like, tricked. It's so sad for Miss Casey. But this conversation revealed that Miss Casey is a part-time innie, and you're like, what the hell is a part-time innie, right? So I guess they just work there whenever they're needed. They don't actually go there every single day, I suppose. Which makes it more sad and messed up, because then you're like, oh, Miss Casey basically is alive for like much less time than everyone else is. And then now she's being punished for like something they did. It's sad. Hi Alex. Thank you for streaming. Oh man, and I'm just using it to yap because I'm selfish. And then Mark is like, no, that's not her fault. That's because I sneaked Helly out. If anyone should be in the break room, it's me. And then Miss Cobell's like, Mark, your valiance is very sweet. Is there anyone like you wouldn't go to the break room for? You're such a good person. But don't worry, Miss Casey is just a wellness counselor. And then Mark is like, but she doesn't deserve to be punished when, like, I don't know, I'm the one that snuck Helly out and I thought she needed the walk. So then, like, Miss Cobell is like, oh, was it just a walk? And Mark is like, yeah, we just went for a walk. And then Miss Cobell, like, turns her screen around and shows Mark the video footage of them, like, sneaking into the other departments. And, yeah, Mark and the others wake up every... Yeah, Miss Casey misses whole days. That's another part that, like, comes in later on. Like, she genuinely just does not know what day she wakes up on. Because to her, it's like, oh, I just left. But then Mr. Milchick will be like, hi, Miss Casey, it's been, like, 2 weeks or something. And you're like, what the hell? It's like, so messed up. Hi, Belle! Thank you for the sub! I'm here with a yapping. Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna use this stream to finish yapping. Hello! But yeah, poor Miss Casey. And then she gets sent to the break room, which we all know what happens there. Like war crime, mental, psychological torture. And then... alright, Mark was like, no, we just took a walk. And then, Miss Cobell turns the screen around and it's like, really? And it's like them sneaking around the departments and Mark is like, what the hell? Have you been watching us the whole time? And she's like, of course I have. And then you're also kind of like, damn, like, you should have known that. Thank you for the follow! Mr. Worldwide. Hi, Pharaoh! I love the view, but without the... I love you. Miss Cobell's everywhere. Yeah, so she's like watching everything basically. Oh my god, my OBS is flopping. Please don't die. I need to finish this recap. Okay, it's fine. Anyways, so yeah, and Mark is like, he has like nothing to say, cause he's like, yeah, that's me on the recording. I haven't watched Severance yet, but I'm sat down for Hockey Yapping. Oh my god, Vel. Okay, good then, because I'm like recapping episode 6 right now, which means the first like 5 episodes you'll go into blind, which is perfect. It's so good. I cannot believe the first season came out like 3 years ago. So people had to wait like 2 to 3 years for the new season. Like, can you imagine waiting for like 3 years? Anyways, whatever. It's crazy because of the way it ends. The cliffhanger is like actually insane. Aki Scrub! This is the content that got me here. Let's go! God. Me applying for VTuber corpos. Isn't this the content you want? Let me in! Just kidding. They're like, hell no. So yeah. Thank you for the posture check. And Miss Cobell's like, you have been sneaking around other departments while failing to do your job in meeting your quota. It's not your job to play nursemaid, Mark. And then Mark is like, okay, but what exactly is my job? Cause this whole time it's like, what the hell have they like even been doing, right? They can't even ask what their job is. Like, they don't even know what they're actually doing. All they're doing is like filing away numbers, and they have no idea what the numbers are affecting. And it's like kind of creepy because the whole like BS thing where it's like, oh, just file away the numbers that you find scary. And remember Helly was like, what the hell does that mean? That's such BS, like scary numbers. But then she experiences it, and it's genuinely like when they're looking at a string of data and you see like a specific number, the panic and fear that grips you is like so genuine, and that's how you know that you have to file that number away. So it's that whole question of like, what are they filing and why does it elicit such a strong emotional response from each person, right? 34. Guy's number is 34. And so Mark is like, okay, but what the hell are we even doing? And he hasn't asked that before. I mean, he has, but like he hasn't been like, can you just tell me? Like, obviously they've asked like, hey, what's our job? But like they get punished for asking. So it's like they just stopped, you know? But now he's like, I've had enough. Like, what the hell are we even doing here? There are all these weird rooms. You guys like torture us in such weird ways. Like, it's inhumane. Except they don't know what humane treatment is like because they were only born into like that place. So they don't even know what like humane treatment is like. All they know is like, this is up. They're like, this sucks. I don't like it. So yeah, he's like, I want to know what we actually do here. And then Miss Cobell, in Miss Cobell way, she's like, well, we're all here to serve cure. And Mark is like, the hell? Anyways. And she's like, until you understand that and meet your quota, all of MDR's hallway privileges are revoked and you guys cannot leave the room anymore. And then that's the end of that scene in the office. And Helly is back at her desk and she's drawing a picture of a lamp. And then Dylan is like, man, I can't believe Miss Casey is not here at MDR anymore. We will struggle with the loss of the will they, won't they between us. So Dylan is kind of like, oh, he had like a crush on Miss Casey. And he's like, oh, now I'll never know if it could have blossomed into something more. Because Miss Casey is no longer here. Because he's lonely. He's like, I'm the only one like left out of like these office romances. But yeah, Dylan asks Helly and Mark, and Dylan's like, hey Helly, you guys enjoy sneaking off with each other the other day? And Helly's like, what? No, nothing happened. And Dylan's like, I don't believe you. And then Mark comes in and tells them that Miss Casey was sent to the break room and they're not allowed to go into the hallways anymore until they hit their quota. So no more visits to other departments. Irving feels really, really bad because he feels like it's his fault that they're being punished because he like kept going to O&D to see Bert. And then Irving's like, I'm sorry guys, I'm setting a bad example as the senior refiner. By the way, Irving has been here like way longer than any of them. So that's like, my man's has been chiseled away. He's like a shell of a human. But yeah, he's like, I'm sorry guys, it's all my fault. And then hearing like Irving apologize, Mark is like, screw that. Where's the O&D department? We're going there right now. So then they all walk out to O&D. And Miss Cobell sees it on the monitor. So she's like, Mr. Milchick, get down! And Mr. Milchick's like, yes, Miss Cobell. So he's like running down the hall. And then Bert leads the MDR team to the storeroom, which is like the actual workspace of O&D, where there's like 7 workers instead of just like the 2 people they said there were. And then Helly's like, whoa, there's way more people in here than I've ever seen in like any department, because they're kept so isolated. And Mark is like, yeah, this is crazy. And Bert is like, it's okay, change can be disorientating, but MDR is here now with us. And then his team is like, huh. And Bert invites like his workers to ask questions to like the MDR group, because they're like, let's ask each other questions, get to know each other, right? And one of the workers, Elizabeth, is like, what exactly do you guys refine? And then they can't even answer that because they don't even know, right? So instead of answering, Irving was like, is the object you're holding a watering can? And she looks at Bert, and Bert is like, yes, it is a watering can. We like theorize that it might be supplies for the executive wing upstairs. Last week's output had a more aggressive feel. And then Elizabeth, the worker, is like, yeah, we had to like give them hatchets. The hatchets weren't aggressive enough. And then they're all like, what? So it's like really confused. Like O&D provides items for like the executive people up there. It's like, why do they need watering cans and then like weapons, you know? So it's like, what's going on? Yeah, what? So Mark is like trying to figure it all out and trying to figure out how it all fits together. And he says, well, the other day I found a department in the opposite direction that's raising baby goats. And everyone's like, baby goats? And Bert is like, yeah, a lot of like the stuff happening is unknown to us as well, but they say that it's important work, so that's why we keep doing it. And Mark is like, why don't we all work together to find out like what the heck is actually going on and stuff like that. And then I forgot who said it. Hold on. Yeah, I think it's Mark. Yeah, Mark is like, we should figure out why there are goats, how big Lumen is, how many employees there really are, and what we are actually doing. And because Lumen is so afraid of telling us what we're doing and stuff, I'm geared up to stream now. I cannot fully hover anymore. Only Bullyaki a little bit. Good luck! I hope you're still streaming by the time it ends. You probably will be, but stay there. Don't move. And have fun. And oh yeah, Mark is like, well, if the Cure Egan philosophy is that illumination is beyond all, why doesn't that include us? Why are we working in the dark? And everyone's like, damn, that's deep. Because they've been following all these philosophies, but then they're realizing like it doesn't apply to them though. Like nobody cares what they're doing. And then yeah, and then remember Dylan like steals something from that department and he like keeps it with him. And the milkshake leads them all back to MDR. And yeah, Mark is like, we didn't do anything wrong. And then Miss Cobell's waiting there. And for some reason she starts singing a song about Cure. It's like a Pledge of Allegiance, but to Cure. She's like singing randomly and they're all like freaked out. They're like, oh. And then after she's done singing, she's like, Mark, break room. So then she takes him to the break room. And on the way to the break room in the hallway, Mark sees Miss Casey walking out of the break room. I'm so confused, right? And then Mark sees Miss Casey walking out of the break room and he's like, I'm sorry. And then she's like, it's okay. Anyways, and then blah 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 blah. The Audi world. Mark Audi is with Alexa, who's like the girl that he's been like going on dates with. And she notices that his knuckles are bruised. And she's like, what happened? And he's like, oh, I don't know. Apparently I jammed my hand while replacing a water cooler at work. At least that's what the Lumen people told me. So it's like, yeah, injuries on their bodies like carry out to the outside world. But Lumen like won't tell them what actually happened. So Lumen will just be like, you like hit your hand on something while you were working. It's nothing. And yeah. So then they're like talking and stuff like that. And then they start talking about like babies in like children because Alexa, his date, like helped Devin deliver her baby, right? So they're talking, and yeah, she's like, oh yeah, I recommended a lactation consultant, which we all know who it is. And then she's like, have you ever thought about having kids? And then this conversation is like kind of important, especially for season 2. But I brushed over it last time because I didn't think it was important. But then I was like, wait a second. Anyways, he's like, oh yeah, with my wife, we did try for a while, but it wasn't working. We also talked about adopting, but we thought that, you know, they were like, he was like, I thought we ought to try more. So then the date is like, oh, I see. And then he's like, I'm glad that like you were thinking that way about like, you know, adopting a child or like trying harder to like have one and stuff. And Mark is like, well, actually it was pretty much Gemma doing all the work, or like it was Gemma's idea is what he says. So you're like, huh. And then she kind of like feels a bit awkward because he's talking about his dead wife. So he's like, oh, sorry, does it make you uncomfortable? And she's like, no, it's fine. And then he's like, yeah, I try not to think about her anymore. And then she says like, well, Gemma's a part of you. You can't just separate yourself, you know, after what happened, because she died in such a like awful way. She was like ripped away from him. It's not something he can just forget. But that's not something that he like is okay with, because he actively keeps trying to forget, right? He like doesn't look at anything. Like he doesn't look at her photos. He like just pretends it's like not there. Like any of his grief is not there, which is why he took on the Severance program in the first place. He was like, I don't want to remember anything. Anyways, and then blah 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 blah. Devin looked up Gabby on social media because Devin was like, why doesn't this woman remember me? Who is she, right? Looks her up and then realizes, hey, this lady that I met at the birth retreat's husband actually, you know, is was it senator or something? Some kind of politician. But like a politician looking to be re-elected, and he supports the legalization of severance, like in general. So she's like, huh. And then Rickon is like, oh, hey honey, the lactation consultant is here. And Devin's like, oh great. And she picks up her baby, and then they open the door and it's it's Miss Selvig, Miss Cobell, and you're like, hell no. And then she like puts on her whole like old lady neighbor act, and she's like, oh, what a cute baby, oh. And then she like plays the like innocent old lady, and then Devin's like, I'm so sorry, because her baby's like crying. And then Miss Selvig's like, here, let me take her. So Miss Selvig like takes the baby and like rocks her, and then the baby stops crying in her arms. And the whole scene is just so unsettling because yeah, the whole time she's like holding the baby, you're like, oh my god, she's dangerous, get away. But yeah, and it's also like that whole idea of like her holding something so vulnerable and defenseless. It's like the most vulnerable and defenseless a human can be is like when they're a baby. So you're like, oh god. Anyways, and then remember there's that whole thing where Dylan G, the innie, wakes up in like a closet, and he's like, where the heck am I? And he's like, what? Where is this? And it's his first time seeing anything outside of Lumen. So he's like, what? And then Mr. Milchick is in front of him, and Mr. Milchick is like, Dylan G, where's the card you stole? Where is it? And Dylan's like, what are you talking about? Where am I? Is this my home? And yeah, I was so nervous. And Mr. Milchick's like, Dylan G, where's the card? Tell me now. I saw the footage of you taking it. Did you smuggle it? Where is it? And then you have to answer me. You don't know how sensitive that information is. Did someone pay you to smuggle it out? And Dylan G's like, what? No. I just took it. I put it in the bathroom in the second stall behind the toilet. I don't even know like what the card is for. I just took it because I felt like it was important. And then at that moment, the closet door opens and a little boy runs in and hugs Dylan, right? And then Dylan G's like, what? And then Milchick pulls the kid off and like tells him to wait outside the closet. And then Mr. Milchick is like, I told you to count to 1,000. So you can assume that Mr. Milchick told like the little boy to like count to 1,000 because he's like, oh, then it's gonna be over. But the little boy didn't listen and like ran into the closet. And the little boy's like, Daddy! And then he like hugs Dylan. And then after Mr. Milchick pulls the boy off, Dylan G's like, is that my son? He's like, do I have children? Like, wait, I have a son? And Mr. Milchick is like, alright, that's enough, Dylan. Thank you for your work. And then he like calls for someone to end it. He's like, okay, like shut it off. And you're like, shut what off? But then something shuts off, and then Dylan goes back to his Audi self. And then Dylan's like, oh, are we done here? And Mr. Milchick's like, yes, thank you very much. And then Dylan hugs his son. And then that's the end of that scene. And so messed up! Because I genuinely think like the whole like ignorance is bliss thing really applies to these people, like the innies, because how could you continue living your whole life in like this one room forever when originally you didn't know anything about yourself, which is like still terrible because it's like the curiosity, but to know that you have a family and then like a child waiting for you on the outside and you can never see them, like that's even crazier. It's so sad. So now you're just like, oh, Dylan, poor Dylan. It's about to get so bad for him. But yeah, and then Mark and his date go to that music venue, and then they see Petey's daughter perform on stage. Blah 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 blah. What's the next part? Oh yeah, so the security goes to Miss Cobell's door, and Miss Cobell's like, did you find the hacker yet? Like the leak, the ex-employee that has betrayed us and reintegrated Petey? And he's like, yes, I got a tip. And they're like, we will find her, don't worry. It's I've gotten tips that someone is being holed up in a lab on like a campus nearby, and the dean working there has told security to look the other way. It's probably Ragabi, like the ex-employee. You should come with me to like find out if it's her for sure. And then Miss Cobell's like, I'm not gonna go, you go yourself. Let me know when you have her, because I have other work to do, aka pretending to be Mark's old lady neighbor. So then Mark wakes up in like the middle of the night. It was after he like went back home with his date, and then they doinked in the bed. Anyways, he wakes up in the middle of the night and he has a flash memory of Petey like collapsing. So then he gets up and he goes out to the garbage can and digs out Petey's old phone, and he puts the battery back in because he just cannot stand it anymore. He's like, I have to know what the hell's going on. So he puts the battery in and the phone immediately starts ringing, remember? And then he answers it and he's like, hello, I'm Petey's friend, who are you? And then after like a long silence, the person on the phone was like, are you Mark Scout? And then what did Petey tell you before he died? And Mark is like, he didn't say anything, but I want to understand, I want to know what's going on. So the person's like, okay, meet me right now. And after that, the episode ends with people installing like a new door on the MDR department to like keep them in, and then Mark walking toward the meeting spot with Ragabi, and then Ragabi's like, are you alone? And he's like, yes, I am. I used to teach at this school. And then Ragabi's like, yeah, I know that already. And then Mark is like, the hell? He's like, who are you? And she's like, just come with me. And then she walks away. And that was episode 6. The next episode might be people's favorite of season 1, at least from the people I know. But I think I should put a picture of Ragabi up, actually. Just so it's all confusing. But yeah, this next episode people really, really love for one scene in particular. And I was wondering if I should play the scene for you guys, because it's such like a fan favorite. I need to add her picture. Ragabi. Ex-Lumen employee. Capital. Gabi, ex-Lumen. Oh, that's the wrong parentheses. Ex-Woman Reintegrator? Should I call her that? Probably. You guys get it. She reintegrated PD. Who is dead, so she did do a good job. Just kidding. Alright. Next. Uh-oh, where did it go? Getting some ice cream. He's like, I need ice cream for this. No worries. Reintegrated. Pretty. That should be good. Okay, next episode. It's called Defiant Jazz, and it's like everyone's favorite episode. Welcome back. Alright, episode 7 is called Defiant Jazz. So, Ragabi, it starts off, Ragabi tells Mark to come with her. Also, what flavor ice cream is it? And Mark follows her, and she leads him inside the building and down some stairs. And Ragabi is like, why didn't you throw PD's phone away weeks ago? And Mark is like, who are you? And then Ragabi's like, I helped your friend PD. And Mark is like, well, you didn't really help him because he died. Like, the reintegration killed him. And Ragabi's like, no, it's not the procedure that killed PD. It's because he didn't follow my post-op instructions and he ran away, like, out of panic. And Mark was like, the heck? Are you a doctor? And Ragabi is like, well, I put the chip in your head and I'm the only one who can deactivate it. And Mark is like, well, maybe I don't want it to be deactivated. Maybe I don't want to be reintegrated. I'm happy the way I am right now. There's like nothing wrong. And Ragabi is like, really? What if your innie wants to be like deactivated? Huh? Like, have you asked your innie? Do you know what he's going through? And like, doesn't he want to live your life? And then Mark kind of like shuts down for a second because he's like, damn, is she right? And Shore's other, like, I'm not gonna butcher that. Oh, Black Forest Cherry. I see. Okay. Yeah, I know what flavor you're talking about. Nice. But yeah. And then she's like, have you ever thought about your innie and if your innie is happy? And then Mark is like, well, my innie lives his own life and I live my own life. And then Ragabi is like, your innie only exists because you do though. For all intents and purposes, he is you. Do you think it's different down there? Like maybe you love your life but he doesn't? Maybe your innie dreams of crawling to the surface and you'll never know. And she basically like gives him a reality check and she goes like, you're the one that brought like your innie into this world without his permission based on your own desire for emotional convenience. You created a whole separate person just for yourself, like for your own like selfish reasons, and now this whole other person is living his own life suffering and like you don't even know, like, and you can't even help him, like he's just stuck there. So Mark is like, sorry. Mark's like, oh. And then Mark says something. He says the same thing that Helly's Audi said. And Mark says, but he's not a person, I'm the person. And you're like, oof. Oh man, Mark, come on. Feel bad right now. Yeah, feel bad. But yeah, Mark is like, but he's not a person. And then Ragabi's like, well, I believe that your innie just wants to do what's right for both of you. And then the security guard that Miss Cobell works with, like, they hear his footsteps, and then he comes in. Because remember, he said he was gonna check out the, like, location he got tipped off of? So the security guard comes, and Mark is like, who are you? And the security grainer is like, oh, Mark, we work together at Lumen. Are you talking to someone? Because when the security guard came in, Ragavi, like, hid really fast. Because she got survival skills. So she hid, like, immediately. Severance gotta be the only TV show that I've enjoyed to peak. It is really good. There's, like... I like, was never a TV show person until, like, 2-3 years ago. And I started watching, like, peak TV shows. And I was like, damn, this is good. I was like, film is so good. This is cinema. Yeah, Severance is really good. I just got into it recently, and I cannot imagine the people that had to wait like 3 years for season 2. Cause like, by the time I got into it, like season 2 is already airing, so I didn't have to wait. I was like, wow, I can't imagine. Anyways, so yeah, Ragabi's hiding, and Kazuma Duncan Sunday. Yes, everyone's here. I have a lot more, but they're not on the screen right now. W. Was saying to Aki dissecting shows is my favorite pastime. Oh, Phil! I should open a Google form. Tell me which show you want me to watch. And I'll ramble about it for you. So yeah, Ragabi's hiding, and the security guard Rainer is like, oh, Mark, we work together. Were you talking with someone just now? And Mark is like, what? Oh, why do you want to know? And then he's like, well, you know, I'm a friend of yours at work, you know. And he's like counting on the fact that Mark doesn't remember anything, so he like has to believe him. It's like, we're friends at work. But Mark feels like something is wrong. And before Mark can say anything though, Ragavi comes up behind him. Like, she's like, slithers up behind him with a metal bat and just hits him on the head. And then blood splatters and Mark starts screaming, and Mark is like, oh my god. And then he's like, what are you doing? Yeah, she teleports behind him. And then instead of answering Mark, Ragavi starts hitting him even more, like with the baseball bat, like a good several other times just to make sure he's dead. So she's like, blah, 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 blah. And then Mark is like, wow, oh my god, there's like more blood. And then Mark is like, holy shit. He's like, I'm gonna throw up. And then Ragavi's like, get it together. And then she's like, come help me move the body. Pick yourself up. And Mark's like, what? Oh, what are you talking about? And she's like, hurry. Yeah, she's like, lock in. We're removing this body now. So then he's like freaking out. He's about to throw up, but he helps her anyway. They drag the body down a hallway, and there's like a heavy trail of blood like being left behind. You're like, damn. So then they drag him out, and then Mark is like, he said that he works with me at Lumen. And then Ragabi's like, no, he didn't. He's not your coworker. He's the head of security for the severed floor. He's the one that punishes like all of you guys on there. He's not your coworker. He lied to you. And Mark was like, oh god, I'm gonna throw up. So then Mark like lets go of Grainer's dead body. He like rushes somewhere. He's like, and then Ragabi's like, stop, hold it in. She's like, don't you dare throw up right now, or I will beat your ass. Mr. Milkshake. She's like, don't throw up right now because it has DNA in it, and they're gonna connect it back to you. And then she gives Mark Grainer's security like card, the one that he uses to get everywhere. And she's like, here, take this. Yeah, hold it in. And she's like, take it to work tomorrow. Like, just put it in your pocket when you go into the elevator. And Mark is like, what? What am I supposed to do with this? Like, how do I know what to do with this? And then Ragavi's like, oh, you won't know, but your innie will know. Like, your innie will see the card and know what to do. So, like, bring it for him. Thank you for streaming. It was nice listening to while eating. I'm gonna hop off to nap now. Have a good stream. Thank you so much. Have a good nap, Alex. Bye bye. And Mark is like, okay. And she's like, yeah, go home, get rid of your clothes, and everything's gonna be okay. I'll be in touch with you, and we'll finish what PD started. And then Mark like runs outside, and then he throws up on the grass. He's like, and then he's back home. He's putting on his clothes in a trash bag, and he ties the bag off, and then he hides the bag of like bloody clothes under the sink. And then he hears a sound, so he like panics a little bit, but it's just Alexa, his date from like last night. And Alexa's like, where were you? And then Mark is a really awkward person, so he's really bad at lying. Which Adam Scott like plays these characters so well. Like even his character in Parks and Rec, it's he just plays them so well. And so Mark is like, oh, me? What am I doing? Good question. He was like, you know, I just came out to get some water. I was feeling thirsty. And Alexa's like, you're being really weird right now. And he's like, well, maybe you just heard stuff in your dream. And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure I heard your car like go like start. I heard your car drive away. And yeah, just helped hiding a dead body. Failed gaslight. We need a word for like what's it called? Manipulate, veil wife, mansplain, and like gaslight, gatekeep girl boss. Except it's like complete failure, like the opposite. Fail gatekeep, fail girl boss, fail gaslight. So then he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. I just needed a drive a little. I wasn't feeling that well, so I went for a little drive. And she's like, are you okay? And he's like, no, it's fine. It's not your fault, you know. Our relationship is a big deal to me, so, you know. And she's like, do you want me to just go now? Like, I can just leave. And then he's like, yeah, maybe. He's like, yeah, maybe I do want you to go. So then that happens, and then the next morning Mark sees the card, like the security key card that Ragabi gave him on the counter, and he like looks at it for a bit, but then he decides to listen anyway, so he takes the card and pockets it. He takes the trash bag out of his home and throws it in his trash can outside. And Mrs. Selvig, who's playing his old lady neighbor, she's like, Mark! And then Mark turns around and he's like, oh. And he's like, oh, hi, Mrs. Selvig. And Mrs. Selvig is like, that's strange. You usually take out your trash in the early afternoon. You never take it out in the morning, like before work. Which is like, okay, creepy. Bro, if my neighbor said that to me, I'd be like, you watch me? But Mark is like, oh. He's like, yeah, no, I just... you know, I thought I should get a head start. And Miss Selvig is like, you look troubled. Why don't you come in and we can talk over a cup of tea? And he's like, yeah, I'll consider your offer. I'll see how my day goes. And then, so then at Lumen, presumably, before they clock in, I assume, Milchick is testing the new door. Yeah, how about no? Milchick is testing the new door that they installed at MDR. And it works. You can't get in or out unless you have one of the cards that bypasses it. So then he turns on the lights in the department and goes into the bathroom where he retrieves the card that Dylan stole from the stall. And then Milchick goes to O&D where Bert and his coworker Felicia are working at separate stations. And he goes to Bert and he gives Bert the missing card. And Bert is like, oh, that's where it went. Oh, my coworker Oswald will be delighted that we found it. Now we can focus on final preparations. And you're like, final preparations? For what? Why is it final? Yeah, this was legit old man Yaoi. Like when it started, I was like, wait, are they thing, because like you could kind of sense like the romantic like undercurrents, but then I was like, no, they wouldn't. But then they did, and I was like, whoa. I was like, it's real. So then, oh, what was it? Oh yeah, Bert is like, now I can focus on the final preparations. And Milchick is like, do you mind if I take a look at your work? And Bert is like, oh yeah, sure. So Bert stands up, and Mr. Milchick is looking at his work. The old man Yowie is real! Everyone's Severance experience. And he's like, this is outstanding. And Mr. Milchick says, oh god, I hate this part. Mr. Milchick is like, he's like, Bert, you have been a great leader for the department, and you deserve something special for all your hard work. And Bert is like, oh, well, I hope it's not a trip to the break room. And then he's like, my trip from yesterday was enough. So yeah, it implies that, hold on, let me get rid of this. It implies that they did send him to like the break room yesterday. Sad. Oh my god, I can't delete it. Whatever. Out of sight, out of mind. And then Mr. Milchick is like, oh no, don't worry, it's something else. Stay tuned. And you're like, okay, creepy. So now you're worried because you're like, oh, so Bert is being rewarded for his work, but Lumen reward? Like, what are they rewarding him for? Also, Mr. Milchick is like really unsettling. So you're like, is he gonna be okay? Anyways, Dylan G clocks into work, and Milchick is like, hey Dylan, welcome back to work. And Dylan obviously is like, what the hell was that? And Mr. Milchick is like, what do you mean? And Dylan's like, in the closet. Like, well, that was my home, right? And my son? Like, what the hell's going on? And Mr. Milchick does the thing that teachers do. It's like, come Dylan, why don't you walk with me? Hey folks, yeah, that's him. Hey folks, I'm one of you employees, fellow employees. So Milchick is like, come have a walk with me, Dylan. And then they're walking together, and Milchick is like, so what happened is called overtime contingency. It allows us to wake up workers off-site occasionally in case of emergencies. And Dylan is like, was that kid my son? And Milchick is like, well, he agreed to count to 1,000, but he didn't, and he just ran into the closet. And you better not tell your colleagues. And he's like pressuring him, like, it's best to keep this to yourself. Your colleagues wouldn't be happy if they knew that, like, you know about your Audi life, would they? Like, they'd be jealous. So Dylan's like, can you at least tell me my son's name? And Milchick is like, you know, Dylan, it's better for you not to know. But I'll find some special perks for you since it's been a rough quarter. And it's like, yeah, I get it. It would be better for him not to know, because like having more of these attachments, it's just making him suffer more. Would you do it? You know, I feel like a lot of viewers feel this way, but I went into the show being like, okay, it's not that bad. Like, sure, why not, right? But then, I continue, like, after the first episode, you're like, never mind. Or, like, even the second episode, you're like, alright. So, yeah, I would kill myself. That's what Heliar did, and it didn't work. So you can't even do that, like, either. And then, so then, where were we? Oh yeah, so, Milchick is like, Dylan, it's better for you not to know. So then, Mark arrives at work, and he's getting ready, and he, like, puts his hands in his pockets, and he feels the card. So then, he, like, looks at it, takes it out, looks at it, and he's like, what the heck is this, right? And then he's greeted by Milchick when he arrives at work, and Milchick is like, come Mark, there's new protocol. I must escort you to your desk. So it's basically like Mr. Milkshake will have to escort them to their desks every time now. Unless they run off to the baby goat room. So, he escorts him to the desk, and Mark is like, oh, what's this new door? Are we being locked in? And Mr. Milkshake's like, oh, the doors are here to ensure that you're tucked nicely into your workspaces, and then it will increase efficiency. And Mark is like, did Grainer order this? Locked in? Say that again. Yeah, Mr. Milkshake wants them to lock in. And then, so yeah. Helly, Irving, and Dylan are already at their workstations, and Helly, like, peeks over the little cubicle divider, and she's like, Mark? What the heck is this? And Mark is like, shrug, like, I don't know. And then he asks Irving and Dylan, like, hey, how are you guys doing? And then they, like, turn on their monitors and get to work, because what else are they supposed to do? And, Milkshake is like, well, so Milkshake is on the phone, and he's telling someone on the phone, he's like, oh yeah, Grainer didn't come into work today. Yeah, everything is fine, I'm just wondering where he is. And you're like, uh-oh. So then, in the outside world, Mrs. Selvig is with Devin, and they're doing, like, the breastfeeding work and stuff, and Miss Selvig, like, shows Devin how to feed her baby, and then it works, and then Devin's like, oh my god, thank you so much, and Miss Selvig's like, yeah, no problem. And then Miss Selvig and Devin, like, laugh over a story that she's telling her, and it's so creepy because you're like, wow, she is so good at playing, like, this nice old lady that's just, like, telling little jokes and stories, and she's, like, laughing with Devin. All the while, she's the one, like, torturing his, like, her brother's, like, innie, you know? Anyways, so yeah, Devin's like, thank you so much. Do you need to, like, get to the store that you work at? And Miss Selvig's like, oh no, it's no problem. They can do without me because I'm having so much fun. And, so Devin tells Mrs. Selvig about, like, meeting Gabby, the woman at the birth retreat. And, she's like, you know, I'm starting to suspect that maybe Gabby was severed to give birth. You know, like how Lumen does for people going to work. And Miss Selvig is like, what? No. She's like, what? No. Maybe it's just, like, giving birth that made her forget things, you know? It's, like, such a stressful ordeal. And then, Devin's like, yeah, maybe. And then Mrs. Selvig is like, hey, Devin, do you know why Mark decided to get severed? I've always wondered. And Devin's like, oh, it was right after he lost, Gemma, his wife. And, he tried to keep teaching, tried to keep his job, but he just couldn't. And, Miss Selvig is like, oh, does he ever talk about his wife? And Devin is like, no, I wish he would though, but, like, you know, Mark is, like, really avoidant, so he, like, tries not to bring it up. And, Mrs. Selvig says, and I don't know if this is, like, real or she just made it up, but Miss Selvig is like, oh, when my husband died, I thought I saw him everywhere and it was so hard. I wonder if Mark ever thinks he sees his wife or something. So then you're like, okay, that was kind of weird. But then, like, I'm trying not to read too much into it. But, like, knowing what I know now, I'm like, oh, that was really weird. But at the time, I was like, okay. Like, squinting a little bit, but okay. She's so creepy. Real. So then Dylan is working on a file called Eminence. Also, all of the files have, like, different names. This is kind of important to keep in mind for season 2. But all the files are named specific things, and they don't know why they're named that way or anything. Like, it's just there, which is basically their whole job. They don't know why something's happening, it's just there. So Dylan's working on a file called Eminence, which is 33% complete. And then, did you finish season 2? I'm caught up, so I watched episode 7, and episode 8 is coming out Friday. Every Friday. I don't know how many episodes they're doing for season 2 though, and I don't want to know because I don't want it to end. So I'll just keep waiting for the weekly episodes. I'm not caught up. Oof, it gets crazy. The latest episode might be like everyone's craziest episode yet. So like, oh my god. But the latest episode is insane. Like, I genuinely felt so nauseous and sick after watching it. It was like cinema. Yeah, it was like, this is cinema. Do we get answers? We get answers, but then we get like... It's like the questions you have. It's kind of like theories. You do get more questions, but like... You get answers, and then you get more questions, yeah. And then the bad stuff that you like already thought, it turns out it's even worse than bad. Like it's even worse than you thought it was. It's all in the new episode. Yeah, damn. Yeah, this new episode drove everyone crazy. There's like hundreds of like analysis videos on YouTube right now. I want to save it. Yeah, you could probably just save it until like season 2 wraps up and then just watch it all in one go. Yeah, you can't unwatch it. So, Dylan's working on Eminence, and then Irving comes to Mark, and Irving is like, oh, what happened to all the soap labels? They're not labeled soap anymore. And then, Mark is like, well... You know, I don't know. Dylan's like, well, we all know it's soap. And then Irving is like, I think that's a question I should ask O&D. So you're like, Irving. Because he's like, I think I should go ask O&D why the soap labels are gone. And then everyone's looking at him like, come on. So, if I got spoiled, I would do things against TOS, not the TOS. And Mark is like, hey, Irving, we can't go anywhere, remember? Like, we're locked in here. And then he's like, I understand that you're worried about Bert. And then Irving is like, honestly, Mark, I'm, like, really concerned that Bert is being punished for when I visited him. Or, like, when we visited him, because the whole department went to visit, remember? He's like, I'm really scared that they're punishing Bert. And then, Dylan is like, gee, if only someone told you that it was a bad idea from the start. So Dylan is, like, particularly irritable that day. And you can tell, like, right off the bat when he says that to Irving. Because the way he says it is like, wow, if only someone told you it was a bad idea to go from the start. It's because he, like, told Irving. He was like, that's a bad idea. So you're like, oh, Dylan's in a bad mood. But then you can kind of understand why, because of the talk he literally just had with Mr. Milchick. And then how he, like, woke up in the freaking closet and saw his son. So you're like, yeah, I get why you, like, feel absolutely awful right now. And then, Mr. Milchick disrupts the atmosphere, and he comes in, rolling a little cart of music and stuff, Mr. Milchick. And he is like, oh, we have earned a 5-minute music dance experience as a perk for Helly R reaching 75% completion on Sienna. So Helly's working on a file called Sienna, and Mr. Milchick is like, we can now have a 5-minute dance experience because they all have like these little weird rewards. I was like, wow, let's all dance for 5 minutes. Or like, oh, we can do this for 2 minutes. And then Irving is like, what? But Helly is actually at 73%, not 75%. Mr. Milchick's like, well, you know, it's been tough for all of us. I thought a little experience would help. So he's like, you can choose one genre and one accessory. So Helly's like, ooh, okay. So she chooses the genre Defiant Jazz. And then she picks up a maraca. And then Mr. Milchick's like, come on, everybody, let's all participate in Helly's dance experience. But then Dylan stays at his desk and continues working. He's just obviously in like a really, really bad mood. And the music starts, and Mr. Milchick starts like flashing lights and stuff, and then he and Helly dance together, and it's this whole like amazing dance sequence. It's so good. I'm wondering if I should just show it. It's really good. Like, everyone loved it so much. Iconic scene. So then, hi Emil, welcome. So Mr. Milchick and Helly start like rocking out together. They're dancing, and Irving also starts dancing. And Irving does like an old man dance. It's cute. And then Mark starts dancing as well. And Mark is like dancing and stuff like that. And he's doing his I don't know, like middle-aged white man rhythm dance. And then while he's dancing, he like notices something in his pocket. So he like takes it out. And it's like, oh, it's the key card, right? And Mark is like, what? And he looks at it, but then he realizes what it is, and then he like quickly puts it back. And Milchick starts dancing near Dylan, who's like still working. And then he's like, yeah, village white guy dance. You guys gotta see it. I think I'll just play the scene later. So Mr. Milchick starts getting like all up in Dylan's face. You know when you're like trying to do work, and then this happened to me when I was in school. But like there's this one friend I had, and every time I was like trying so hard to like rush this assignment or like do work, she just kept like smacking my like a screen, like my tablet screen, because it was art school, so we were drawing. She just kept like smacking the screen or like talking to me, and I was like going insane. I was just, let me finish this. So that's what Mr. Milchick starts doing to Dylan. He's like dancing in front of Dylan, like all up in his face. He's like shaking his hands, like jazz hands. He's grooving, okay? Mr. Milchick got rhythm. So Mr. Milchick's like dancing, and then Dylan is just slowly like building up. He's like about to explode. He's so mad. And then he finally explodes, and he like gets up, and then he pushes Milchick against like the music cart, which like ruins the dance experience and everything. And so he pushes Milchick, and he's like, "What was my son's name? Like, what's his name? Just tell me. Like, that's my son? Just tell me his name." And then he starts crashing out. Yeah, valid crash out. Imagine going through all of this while everyone's partying around you. I would destroy the room. Anyways, the Carlton dance with that smile. Yeah, so Dylan pushes him down and then starts biting him. Like just straight up like feral. It's like, ah, and then everyone's like, oh my god. So then the others start pulling Dylan off of Mr. Milchick. And Mr. Milchick is like, help me. And they're like pulling Dylan off. And they're like, Dylan, what's wrong? Like, why are you acting like this? What's happening? And then Mr. Milchick stands up, and he's like bleeding on his like arm near the shoulder area a little bit. And he's like, oh, what the hell? And Mr. Milchick is like trying to keep his composure, because like as he's supposed to. Look at that smile. He's just always supposed to be like the, hey folks, hope you're enjoying work, like kind of guy. So he's like trying to compose himself, but he's like visibly like distressed. So he's like, I'm going to report this to Miss Cobell. And then Dylan is like, I don't care. Why don't we go together then? We'll go see Miss Cobell together. And then Mr. Milchick is like, music dance experience is officially cancelled. And then he leaves. And then the other people are like, Dylan, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, what was that about? And then Dylan basically spills like everything to them. And Dylan's like, okay, there's something called overtime contingency. And they can wake us up in the real world anytime they want. They lied to us. It's not just in the Lumen building. They can literally switch us on and off whenever they want. So then everyone else is like, what? And Dylan's like, yeah. Milchick woke me up at home. I was at my home and I saw my son. And my son hugged me and he was so happy to see me. And I didn't even know I had a son. And then he's like, but then Milchick pulled my son off of me and it was just over. And now I'm just supposed to have that in my head for the rest of my life. And I never get to see my son again. And Helly is like, wait, we could use this, because if Lumen can wake us up on the outside, that means we can also wake ourselves up on the outside too. And then everyone's like, oh, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. They're like, yeah, we can find a way to control it and see the outside and then find out who we really are. And Irving is like, I'm sure the controls are somewhere we can't access though. And then Mark is like, wait a second. So he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out the security card in his pocket, right? And he's like, do you mean it could be somewhere like the security office? And everyone's like, where the hell did you get that? And Dylan's like, that's Grainer's card. Like, how did you get this? And Mark's like, I don't know. It was just in my pocket. I found it during the music dance experience. I must have had it when I came in. And Helly R is like, that means your Audi wanted you to have it. But why would your Audi like want you to have the security card? Why would he have it and you don't? Like, because they're not even supposed to know Grainer or each other on the outside. And Mark is like, I really don't know. And Helly's like, you know what? Then it's time for us to go on a field trip again. Another MDR field trip. So Dylan's like, what about the other security guards? And Helly is like, there is no other security guard. The only person I've ever seen is Grainer. I bet they don't even have security. Like, I bet he's the only guy. So then they're like, yeah, and also Mr. Milchick can't be everywhere at once. So it's not like he can catch us anyway. And then Helly's like, Mark, do you know where the security office is? And Mark is like, yeah, I do, because Petey saw it one time during a fire alarm drill and he showed it to me. And they're like, okay guys, we got this. Everything everywhere all at once. In another life, my innie would have loved to file refining numbers with you. Where was I? So yeah, they're like, alright, it's time to do this. So then Mark tells Dylan, it's like, okay, when we do this, like, here's the plan. You stall Milchick if he shows up, okay? And I'll use the card to open the door. And then he tries it, and it works. The door opens. So they're like, okay, the security card is legit. So as soon as they're all out, Irving immediately heads to O&D because he's really worried about Bert. Because remember, like, they all went there, and Irving is like, I think Bert's going to be punished for, like, our transgressions. So then Irving's like, I'll be right back. I just need to make sure Bert's okay. So he runs off to O&D, and Mark and Helly go in the opposite direction toward the security office, and Dylan, like, stays as a lookout. So then Mark uses the security card to enter the security office, and they realize the whole room is just filled with monitors. So it's like every single department is like under surveillance, blah blah blah. Just like typical what you expected. But then Helly finds what they're looking for, and it's a panel on the wall with like a ton of names. So it's like the names of every person working there, including their name. And there's like little switches. So she finds a binder with like the protocol in it, and she's like flipping through it. And there's one page for overtime contingency controls, so she pulls the page out of the binder and then puts it back on the shelf. And then Mark sees on one of the monitors that Miss Cobell is on the elevator, like on her way here. So he's like, oh, we gotta get out of here. And Helly's like, IDGAF. She's like, whatever. So Cobell's walking through a hallway, and at the same time, Irving is walking through another hallway. It's like showing these parallels. It's pretty cool. And Miss Cobell runs into Natalie. And Natalie is a Lumen worker. She basically reports to the board of like higher ups. She's like the person that communicates between the board and then like all the other people working down there. So Cobell runs into Natalie. And Natalie is like, oh, I was looking for you. The board is on. And the board wanted to tell you that Grainer is dead. And Miss Cobell's like, what? And then Natalie's like, the board finds this troubling and wants to know if Cobell knew he was like... And so, okay, Natalie talks in a certain way where... I feel like people have like made it into memes, but she'll be like, the board finds this troubling. Or like, the board finds this situation mysterious. Or like, she's like, the board is now on. And then it's like kind of an ongoing thing where Miss Cobell gets like really excited to speak to the board, and Miss Cobell's like, oh yes, I'm doing everything I can. I'm also, and then Natalie will be like, the board has hung up. Because like the board doesn't give a crap about Miss Cobell. So the board like always hangs up after they say something, and they don't even like hear her response. So Natalie would just be like, the board has hung up. Like she always says this. It's like kind of funny. Anyway, but yeah, the board says skill issue. And yeah, so she's like, the board is on, and the board would like you to know that Grainer is dead. And Miss Cobell's like, what? And then Natalie's like, the board finds this really troubling and wants to know if you knew he was missing or if you had spoken to the police. And Miss Cobell's like, no, but I'm sure that the person who killed him is probably the same person who reintegrated Petey. And then Natalie is like, the board would like to remind you that the board has not acknowledged reintegration as possible. And Miss Cobell's like, no, it happened. I have the data and the proof, like, to show them. I'd be happy to share it in person with the board without intermediaries. And then Natalie's like, let me ask the board. And then she like waits. And she's like, the board agrees and will be available to meet with you at the next Egan Family Gala next week to discuss further. And Miss Cobell's like, yippee! Yeah, they'll add a... Oh my god, I can't wait for them to reveal the board. There's no word bossing say. So yeah, Irving, on his way to O&D, right? He arrives at O&D and he realizes they're all having a party. So Irving's like, what? What's this party for? And he sees like Bert's co-workers, Elizabeth and Felicia, like just chatting happily together. And yeah, Mark and Helly go back to MDR and they tell Dylan, they're like, oh, nobody was in the security office. And then Mark is like, oh, it's probably because like we're always constantly being watched anyway, so it's not like they actually need someone in there. And Helly is reading the page of the overtime contingency that she pulled out. And she's like, man, there's a lot of steps. Like, it really is a lot of steps. It's like, switch this on, and then this on, and then hold these two at the same time. And then make sure you hold all of them over here. It's like a lot of, it's a lot of instructions, which I would not remember. So if I was put in charge of this plan, we would fail dramatically. Hi, Izu! I wish to study like a mouse experiment. That would be wonderful. I'd be so excited. And, but yeah, Dylan G memorizes the pattern quickly though, because he's always been like the smarter one out of everyone. So with numbers and stuff. So he memorizes the page of instructions and he's like, okay, I think I've got it. And Mark is like, okay, but if we carry out this plan, that means one of us has to stay behind after work. And Dylan's like, I'll be the one, since, you know, I've already been out there. I already know I have a son, and I've already seen, like, the closet of my house. So the rest of you should be able to see who you really are, too. And Helly is like, really? It seems like a two-person operation, though, inside of the security room with all the instructions. And Dylan's like, no, it's fine. I'll be able to do it on my own. And Helly is like, okay, but there are two switches to hold open on opposite sides of the door. And Dylan's like, don't worry, I can do it. So he insists they can. And then, back at O&D, Irving walks in and there's a party, right? So he's like, what the hell's going on? So Mr. Milchick wheels in a television, like a little TV. And the O&D employees are like all applauding and they're like, yay! And then Bert walks out, so they're all applauding Bert. And you're like, okay, what's going on? Like, is this another dance experience thing before Bert? And Mr. Milchick is like, isn't this great? All your coworkers are here. And then Mr. Milchick notices Irving like standing in the corner. And he's like, huh, I suppose I'll have to get those doors looked at more carefully. In the meantime, why don't y'all join us for the festivities? So he opens the TV, and on the TV is Bert's like outie self, and it's a video he recorded. And it's basically a bye-bye video, and it says like, I would like to quit my work now. I'm satisfied and fulfilled. I don't need to work anymore. You know, it's time to retire. And you're like, oh my god. Yeah, you're like that was the reward Mr. Milchick was saying he had for Bert. It's crazy. Island. Liable. And then Irving is also like, wait, what? And then in the video, Bert's Audi is like, yeah, you know what? You have all left an impression on me. Even though I don't know any of you. Like, the whole video is very much that vibe, and it's like really unsettling. And it's like, I don't know any of you. I don't know any of your names, and I won't remember any of you. But I'm sure that deep down inside, you've all left an impression on me. And somehow I will remember you guys eventually. And it's like, we will never meet again, but thank you guys for everything you've done for me. It's like this whole goodbye video, right? And he's like, so thank you very much. And then he's like, and congratulations to my innie on the retirement. So everyone's watching and they start clapping. And then Irving is like horrified, because that basically means Bert is gonna die. Like, they're just killing him. So Irving speaks up and he's like, you're all okay with this? You're all okay with just letting Bert die? Like, he's your coworker. You worked with him for years. And he's like, are you all being punished because of what I did? Like what MDR did? Is Bert being punished because we came to O&D? And Milchick is like, no. Bert's Audi is just retiring. It'll happen to everyone someday, even you, Irving. And then Irving gets really upset, understandably, and he goes on like this little ramble where he's basically like, you don't understand what it feels like because you're not severed, Mr. Milchick. He's like, you're not severed. You walk out of here with all your memories, and no one can take your memories away from you and make it look like you never existed. But you guys can do it to us, because you can take us away and it will be like we never even existed. Like, never lived at all. Like, it's just gone. They're completely wiped. Because remember, they also like replaced all the photos too. Like when PD was gone, they replaced all of his photos also. So it's like not even photos or anything. Like nothing will be left of their existence. So Mr. Milchick is like, Irving, go back to MDR this instant. And then Bert is like, no, it's wonderful to have Irving here. Can he stay, please? And Mr. Milchick is like, well, Irving can stay for Bert's party if he behaves himself. And then Irving is like, okay. And then Mr. Milchick prompts them all to say goodbye to Bert. He puts on like a record, like song playing in the background. And then the goodbye is basically, it's like Bert, and then there's a line of his coworkers, and they each take turns giving him a handshake. It's like such a detached goodbye. It's so sad. So they all take turns shaking his hand, and then eventually Irving is the last person on the line, and Irving shakes Bert's hand, and yeah, and then they all eat like the fruit platter together and stuff, and then Mr. Milchick escorts Irving back to MDR and drops him off. And then once Milchick is gone, Irving looks at everyone else and he's like, we need to destroy this place. He's like, we need to burn Lumen to the ground. We need to kill everyone here. And then he's like, we need to destroy Lumen. We need to cook Jesse. Yeah. Amen. And then everyone else is like, hell yeah. Because MDR is a bunch of little rebellious pookies. We love that for them. And then, so it's in the Audi world now. Mark is drinking and reading articles about the college that he used to work at. And then there's a knock on his door, and he finds Alexa, his like date there, and she's like, oh, I left my phone at your place. And then Mark is like, oh, make yourself at home. And he says like, I forgot what he said. He talked about her phone. I think he said like he found her phone, And he was like, oh, I would have dropped it off, but I don't know where you live. And Alexa was like, hey, Mark, are you okay? Like, you just seem really unwell. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like, I think I'm gonna go because he's acting really, really weird, obviously. He looks like he's on the brink of crashing out, basically. So Alexa is a smart woman. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna go. She's like, I think I'm gonna go now. You're obviously not ready for a relationship. And you have a lot of things to like work on and unpack yourself first. And he's like, no, I'm ready, because he just wants to like move on. So he's like, no, I'm ready for a relationship. I'm fine. I'm so mentally stable. I'm wonderful. I'm very normal. And Alexa's like, yeah, no. And then he's like, oh, why? What was it? Was it because I kept talking about my dead wife? He's like, oh, is it because I kept talking about Gemma? Well, it's fine. I'm over her. I'm over her dying now. And he's like, I'm fine. He's like manic. He's like, oh, my dead wife? Yeah, it's whatever. I'm ready to move on. And then Alexa's like, okay. She's like watching him break down. And then he's like, here, I'll prove it to you. And he like walks over to like this little box he has. He opens it and he takes out a picture of his wife. And he's like, look, I'll rip it up. And he starts ripping up this photo of his dead wife. Like, he's obviously like super disturbed right now. So he's like, look, it's fine. And he's like ripping it to shreds. And that obviously like gives Alexa a huge blaring like red alarm, because she's like, what the hell? So then Alexa's like, Mark, you need help. Like, this is terrible. So then she leaves. And then Mark follows her outside. And he's like, we can talk about... Oh, fine. You want to talk about my wife then? We can talk about Gemma. We can talk about Gemma all you want. And then Alexa gets into a car and she's like, I'm gonna go. Bye, Mark. And then as she's leaving, Mark starts like going on this tangent, and he's like, like Gemma was extraordinary. Like, we can talk about her as much as you want. Like, she was amazing. And it's just so sad to watch, because you know that he has not like processed any of his grief yet. And this is the first time he is acknowledging, where he's like, my wife was like an amazing person. Like, she was so loving. Like, she was extraordinary. She was brilliant. Like, she was so smart. And he's like saying all these things, and it's so sad. Me too, fictional character. And then he like goes back inside like really defeated, and he starts picking up like the little scraps of paper that he like tore it up of the photo, and he starts like slowly taping them back together. And then once he's finished taping it back together, he looks at the picture, and it's Miss Casey. Gagged! Yeah! And Gemma has the same face as Miss Casey. This is like crazy, because you're like, oh my god. Like, they were next to each other the whole time. It was, oh my god, my mind is being blown. It's so awful. And then like, I cannot imagine the episode ending there and then having to wait like a whole week just to watch it. And that's crazy. But yeah, the episode does end there. He takes it back together, and Gemma's like has Miss Casey's face. So you're like, God, it's not Miss Covell. Yeah, the plot twist now is just, oh, it's Miss Covell. But yeah, actually insane. And now you have like more questions, because you're like, isn't Gemma dead? But Miss Casey is alive, but technically like they're two different people, but they would need Gemma's body, no? Right? So you have all these questions, and it's like, unless Lumen has the ability to somehow like sever a person that's maybe like not dead per se, but like people were theorizing, what if like the car accident left her like disabled or like with a brain injury. So people are saying, what if Lumen had the ability to like sever a personality from someone who might like be in a coma or is disabled. So it was like all these theories where they're like, how is it possible for Miss Casey to exist when she's actually Gemma? I would crash out for Miss Casey. It's so awful because it's just like Mark is going through it, and the whole time Mark S has like been with Gemma. They've looked each other in the face, and that like it's so upsetting because you remember in the first episode where they're testing the memory. So they test for visual memory, like general memory, personal memory, and they make sure that you're unable to recognize faces of people you know, so that like they could put Gemma and Mark in the same room. Like two people who deeply loved each other, but then they could look at each other's faces and just not recognize each other. And that is so sad. Anyways, the episode ends like that, and you're like, holy shit! Defiant Jazz is like the episode ever. It's so good. I'm gonna lighten the mood for a bit, and I'll show you guys the music dance experience. Unless you don't want to see it, you can look away if you want to save it for when you watch it. But I need to show you guys Mr. Milchick's moves. Okay, it's around 4 minutes and 25 seconds long, so if you don't want to be spoiled... Oh wait, no, that's without the... Okay, the entire beginning is like that. I think I'll just show you guys the dance scene, which is like 2 minutes, 25 seconds long. So like just come back around 3 minutes later if you don't want to be spoiled. Let me open this. It's so funny. Oh, Mr. Milchick can dance for real. Is it this one? Alright. Where does the dance experience start? Is it here? Okay. It's time! Hi, Ninjash! Alright, this was the music dance experience. Oh, and this is the number thing they do. Look at him go!
Okay.
He got rhythm! Irving old man dance. Mark's white guy dance. Yeah. Dylan's losing it. Go white boy, go! Oh yeah, and then he finds the card.
Irvin, what you got? Let's see it.
This whole scene is so good. Look at him shimmy! Dylan's crashing out. The arms waving. And it just like completely stops. It's cinema. Absolute cinema. Yeah, that episode was so good. Absolute cinema. Milchick though, my man got rhythm in his bones. The little bird dance he started doing was so good. Alright. That was the music dance experience. It was amazing to watch. Mr. Milchick is crazy. Got crazy rhythm, you mean. Got crazy moves. Alright, next episode is called What's for Dinner? Which is like a reference to when Irving is like, what's for dinner, kids? Anyways. So then, boom, 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 boom. The episode starts off with Irving, but in the outside world. So you're like, oh my gosh, because we've never seen Irving, like Helly R or Dylan G's like outside selves, right? So the episode starts off with Irving's Audi sitting on a bench, and he's reading a book called The Emperor's Handbook. And his dog sits on the ground in front of him. So you're like, oh, Irving has a dog! And then Irving drives home to his apartment with his dog. And he goes in, he pours himself a cup of coffee. And he starts drinking the coffee, and he starts looking at a series of paintings. And you look at the painting, and every single painting is of the same thing. So it's this really dark, like pitch black, long hallway. And there's like a light at the end. It looks like a light at the end of the tunnel kind of situation. So there's like a door at the end of this dark hallway, and it's like completely bright, but the rest of the hallway is just pitch black. And it's super scary. And you're like, what is this? Because it kind of looks like the inside of Lumen, but we haven't seen this like room or hallway yet, but you can kind of tell it's the inside of Lumen. So it's like, how does Irving on the outside know about this hallway that he keeps painting, you know? Because then he sets up a new board on his canvas, and he starts painting again. And you can assume it's the same painting because the paint is all like grays and blacks. Let me see if I can find it actually. Irving painting. I can't find the little like stacks, but it basically looks like this. Like a really dark hallway, and then at the end is like this light. Pretty creepy. But you're like, that's the inside of Lumen, right? And then this is like the painting he starts working on. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, maybe like on a subconscious level, his innies, like memories are leaking through. Like maybe it's something he's seeing in his dreams or something like that. And it reminded me of when Mark S was at wellness check, and like Miss Casey asked him to sculpt something, and he ends up sculpting like a tree, but it's the tree that he sees on the outside. So you're like, there has to be some kind of overlap, right? That Lumen is like not realizing is happening. So yeah, that's what happens. And then the scene shifts, and Mark, Dylan, Helly, and Irving all arrive at work. And Helly finally gets her category, her like file to 100%. So then they're like, whoa, we're doing so well, we're all gonna finish. And then Dylan's like, no, Helly's not gonna finish because, oh yeah, she has to get to 100%, but she's like almost there, but not really. Oh, Dylan's like, no, Helly's not gonna finish in time because Irving and I already done it for like hours. And then Mark is like, it's fine, Helly's gonna finish. So then Irving is like, maybe it might help if we all stand behind her and chant her name. And Mark is like, no, just let her focus. So at the office, Miss Cobell's office, Miss Cobell paces around and asks Mr. Milchick how Helly is doing. And Mr. Milchick is like, well, it's down to the wire. She might make it, she might not, but it seems like she will. So they're like watching Helly work on the monitor also. They're like, she's gonna make it, she's gonna make it. And Miss Cobell's like, okay, begin the preparations for when Helly does finish it. I also want to schedule an end of the quarter wellness session for Mark one last time. And Mr. Milchick's like, oh, are you sure? And Miss Cobell's like, yeah, it's been a pretty hard quarter. But I'm sure that we're all pleased with your work and stuff like that. So then you're like, oh no, she wants to schedule one last wellness session for Mark? That sounds awful. First of all, why just Mark? And second of all, Miss Casey, she's Gemma, so it's like, how's that gonna go, you know? Hi, Warlock. Meanwhile, Mark is fidgeting while Helly finishes watching the Matrix show. I finished it. I'm recapping it for everyone. We have this is the second to last episode. We have one more episode left to go through. Anyways, so Mark is fidgeting while Helly works, and then she calls him over to have him watch her do the final piece to complete this file called Sienna. And Irving and Dylan rush in from the kitchen as she completes it, and they watch the little happy animation that plays on the computer to be like, congratulations on your achievement. And it's very dystopian, but when they finish their work, even when they boot up their computer, there's a really cartoony animation that plays, and the cartoon character is supposed to be Kira, the founder and CEO. So it's this animation of oh wow, flying off, you did it. And then it's the cartoon Kira being remember, I love you. It's really weird. And Dylan is I'm so happy we made the quota. And Irving is yes, now we can carry out our plan, their little plan to infiltrate the outside world. So then Mark is in Miss Cobell's office, and they're laughing around together a little bit. And Mark is well, we made it despite the staffing changes. And she's yep, and also the time you guys spent wandering the hallways. And she's have you decided who you want to stay for the waffle party? So when they complete the quota, they get to choose one worker that gets a little waffle party. It's again, Lumen's rewards are very do this, you finish this, you get to dance for 5 minutes. Or oh, you complete the entire quota of the quarter, here's a waffle. It's very that. So she's oh, Miss Cobell's have you decided who to choose to stay for the waffle party? And Mark is yeah, Dylan. And Miss Cobell's you know you can choose yourself, right, for the waffle party. And Mark is nah, Dylan G loves waffles and he's worked really hard. And Miss Cobell's oh, well, okay, I'll make the arrangements then. By the way, can you drop by the wellness check? All the department heads are doing one last wellness check for the end of the quarter. You know, with all the stress of the security Rainer retiring and everything. And she's thank you so much, Mark. Lumen really needed us to make the quota. So then Mark makes his way to his wellness session. And Miss Casey peeks out from behind the door and calls him in. And she's hey, where did the tree go? Because she had a little tree set up in the therapy room and it's gone now. So Mark is hey, Miss Casey, where did the tree go? And she doesn't answer him. And then Mark notices that everything's in boxes. And he's why are there so many boxes here? What's going on? And Miss Casey goes oh, Lumen has a new wellness director, so I'll be retiring at the end of this session. That's awful. We find out Miss Casey is Gemma, right? And then they're okay, time to get rid of her. What? And Mark doesn't even know it's her. It's so sad. So he's literally like seeing his wife again for the last time and he doesn't even know. It's so messed up. Anyways, so then Mark is like, what? When did they tell you this? And Miss Casey's like, oh, they told me just now, like right before you came in. And then she turns on like the little soundtrack in the therapy room, which is just like basically nature sounds. And Miss Casey is like, well, Mark, you're eligible for a special augmented wellness session because you led your department to meet your quota. And Mark is still like going on and he's like, what? But why would you get fired? I didn't think you'd get fired. And then she like kind of ignores him and she starts reading all facts about like him on the outside, you know. And gosh, I forgot what the facts were. I'm pretty sure it's important because it's like stuff she knows about him because they were married, but then it's like they don't know each other right now. It's so messed up too to have her like read off these facts about him. Oh, anyways. What was it? Facts about Mark. What was it? I don't think I can find the exact facts. Yeah, it's not showing up. But I think it's just basic stuff like oh my god. Okay. No, it's not basic stuff. For some reason, all the facts that Miss Casey reads off about Mark's Audi are like really specific things that like only she like would know. Like only Gemma would know. Like for example, when she read Irving's facts to him, it was like, oh, your Audi loves water, your Audi loves to swim, your Audi loves painting, right? But then she reads the facts off for Mark, and it's like, your Audi pays all of his gas and electric bills within 3 business days. Your Audi listens to music while shaving, but he doesn't listen to it while showering. Your Audi prefers 2 scoops of ice cream in 1 serving, but they must be the same flavor. Like, it's really, like, personal facts, you know what I mean? Where it's like, only if you, like have lived with this person, you would know all these little details, right? So it's like, oh, this is heartbreaking. What's going on? And then he interrupts her and he's like, I can talk to someone for you. It's not your fault that like we were the ones that got you in trouble. I didn't think they would fire you. Like, why are they firing you? I'll talk to someone. And then she puts like the little like paper with his facts down. And she starts talking. And she is like, you know, I really liked being in the office with you that day. I know I annoyed you, but my life has only been 107 hours long, mostly in the form of half-hour sessions. My favorite time was the 8 hours I spent watching Helly because it was the longest time I have ever been awake. And it's like... they would only wake her up to put her in the counseling room and make her do these like half-hour sessions. And then like she'd be gone. And the longest time she had ever been awake in like the 107 hours of her existence was the 8 hours that she spent watching Helly while they were working. And she's like, that was my favorite time because it's the longest time I've ever been awake. And I was like, oh my god, Miss Casey! And man, so sad. And then Mark is like, there must be something I can do. And Miss Casey's like, why do you care so much what happens to me? And Mark S is like, well, because we're people. We're our own people. We're not just parts of people. These are our lives, and like no one can just turn your life off for you. And Miss Casey is like, Mark, you're a really nice person. And then she continues reading more facts about him to him. And then all the while Miss Cobell is watching the whole session on like her screen. Oh man. And Mr. Milchick says, it's good that Mark and Miss Casey don't remember each other. It means that the chips work, which is a win. And Miss Cobell's like, yeah, take Miss Casey back down to the testing floor. So you're like, testing floor? What's going on? Also, that's so sad. Where it's like, wow, it's a good thing like this husband and wife don't remember each other. That means our technology is working. But anyways, so after the wellness session, Mr. Milchick escorts Miss Casey to a door. And he says, he opens the door and he has her like go through the door. And Mr. Milchick is like, well, this is it, Miss Casey. Goodbye. Thank you for your hard work. And she like opens the door and it's the same dark hallway that Irving on the outside has been painting. Like the really black hallway with like the red light at the end. So you're like, oh. You're like, and then Mr. Milchick is like, well, you're on your way now. So we get to know what it means in season 2. Yes, I would say yes. You do find out where it goes, if that helps. So yeah. So Mr. Milchick is like, well, here you are, Miss Casey. On your way now. And Miss Casey looks really hesitant to like go anywhere. Like she kind of just stands there and stares back at Mr. Milchick because like obviously who would willingly like walk like down that hallway, especially when you're Miss Casey who has only been alive for like 107 hours. And now they're basically like, okay, now go not exist. And she's like, but I want to exist. Like, she wants to, but like, she can't. She has no choice. So, yeah, she went. She's like, are you sure? Mr. Milchick is like, well, off you go. And she doesn't move, so he kind of like rushes her. And he's like, come on, I have stuff to get back to. So Miss Casey starts like slowly walking down the dark hallway. And then she stops. Thank you for the follow. And she stops and she turns around and she's like, do you know if I'm happy up there? So like, do you know if like my Audi is happy? Do you know if I'm happy outside? And Mr. Milchick is like, yes, you do all sorts of wonderful things. So then Miss Casey turns around, she continues walking. And then she stops and then she turns around again. And then she starts to ask a question. Like, you can tell she's about to ask a question. She's like, she says, I think she says where. She goes like, where? And then Mr. Milchick cuts her off. And Mr. Milchick is like, you know, I have a lot to do today. Off you go, okay? And then he like closes the door. And she starts like walking back. And then she enters the elevator. And the elevator goes down. So you're like, what just happened? Hi, Hime. Yeah, me when I lie. She's like, oh, am I happy on the outside? And Mr. Milchick's like, yeah, definitely. It's like, no, she's dead. It's so sad. And then we never find out really like what she was going to ask. All she says is where. But you have to keep that in mind for season 2. But she goes where, and then he cuts her off, and then he makes her leave through the elevator. One day I should have been on 60. This is a crime against me. Aww, underwear. But yeah, the elevator goes down, and you can assume it's to the testing floor that Miss Cobell was talking about. So there goes. Miss Casey is now dead. She's gone. Her existence never counted. And then so Mark makes his way back to MDR, and he tells Irving, Kelly, and Dylan, he's like, I had a wellness check, and they fired Miss Casey, and Dylan is all set for the waffle party. Is she dead or dead? Technically, it's like they exist if they come back. So like, for example, if Bert were to come back to Lumen, like he would exist again, but since she's dead on the outside and they're most likely not bringing Miss Casey back, it's technically like she's just gone. I had to take a picture of my face or something. I saw I felt my stomach turn dirty. Oh my god, I relate to that so hard. I can't even go down that rabbit hole. I'll crash out on stream. Like Dylan during the dance experience. So yeah. And Mark is like, they fired Miss Casey, and Heliar is like, what? It's like, is there anything we can do? Why would they fire her? And Mark is like, I don't know. And he's like, are you guys sure you want to do this? And he's asking again because like now he's watched like another person, you know, just like have their existence wiped. So he's like, if it happened to us, are you guys sure? But before they can talk any further, Mr. Milchick comes in with their pre-waffle party egg bar. He's like, it's egg bar time! And he's like, you guys deserve it for reaching your quota. And he's like, but before I begin, I have a special gift for Dylan G, our 3-time refiner of the quarter. So he hands Dylan a box, and Helly is like, open it, open your present. And Dylan's like, I want to open it alone. And Mr. Milchick is like, no, you should show them. So Dylan opens the box, and they like look really touched by what they see in the box. But we don't get to see what's in the box, at least not yet. So then they enjoy their like little egg bar social, and Mr. Milchick is like grinning. He's like taking photos of them. He's like, yay! It's a bomb. And Helly offers to stay behind instead of Dylan, because Helly is like, hey Dylan, you know, I don't mind staying behind. Don't you want to see your kid again? Like, go see your kid again. Don't worry. And Dylan is like, you know what? If what we're doing tonight is just the first step, then we have many more things to do. Like, I don't mind. You need to go out there. You need to see, like, what your life is actually like. I've already seen mine. So Helly is like, well, okay, if you're sure. And then Miss Cobell goes into her office, and Natalie is waiting there. Natalie, the board person. And Natalie's holding 2 pictures in her hand. One is of when Helly R attempted to take her life. And she asks Miss Cobell about it, because remember, Miss Cobell didn't report it to the board. So Natalie is like, what is this? This happened? The board would like to know why you didn't tell them. And Miss Cobell is like, did Milchick give you the pictures? And Natalie's like, just answer the question. So Miss Cobell is like, am I speaking with the board? And Natalie doesn't really answer, so Natalie just says, the board also knows that you've been spending time at Mark S.'s sister's house. And then Natalie's like, the board has decided that you will be suspended from your job effective immediately, so she's fired. And Miss Cobell's like, crashing out. Everyone starts crashing out. So Miss Cobell like crashes out, and she's like, what? And Miss Cobell asks like, she like crashes out, and she starts screaming, and she's like, Natalie, you little bitch. She's like, is the board even here? And then after a moment, a voice over the speaker is like, yes, we are here. And Miss Cobell's like, oh. And she like sits back down. She's like, I apologize for being so rude earlier. I'll explain everything to the board tonight. I have the evidence of reintegration. You know, like she hasn't even showed them it yet. And she's like, I will explain everything to you guys tonight. And then Natalie cuts her off, and Natalie's like, the board has ended the call. Another one of those situations. And Miss Cobell is like slowly like losing her mind. And then so then Irving pulls out a compliance handbook back at MDR, and he starts reading it out loud. And then he puts an egg in the book and like just closes it. Like, he just starts like vandalizing company property because he can't take it anymore. So he's just like, especially the handbook, which he has like memorized from like the first page to the last page. Like, this is so important to him because he like loves following the rules. He just completely like ruins it because he hates Lumen now. He can't take it anymore. I like the board. I loved hearing it. The way she says it is so funny. She's like, the board has ended the call. So then Mark finds Helly in the kitchen, and Helly is like, you know what? Maybe the baby goats we saw laid these eggs, and they're like laughing and joking around with each other. And then eventually they start talking about the plan, and Helly is like, are you scared? And Marcus is like, yeah, I am scared of getting caught because, like, you know, it could happen to them. What happened to Miss Casey? The board device thing? Yeah, it's Natalie. She's so funny. I love the way she like speaks. It's really funny. And yeah, Helly is like, well, they left us unattended. Maybe they thought we'd be too dumb to like do anything, so they won't see it coming. And then Mark is like, but what if we never wake up again? Like, what if we might not wake up, and then like our existence is just over? Or maybe, what if we're just like assholes on the outside? Like, what if our outside selves are just like terrible people? Like, what will we do then? And then Helly jokes around and she's like, oh well, I bet my outside self is an asshole, because that whole video she recorded for Helly where it was like you are not a person. It's like, damn, her outside self awful for real. She's like literally the definition of the fake HR person who smiles at you. Yes, the hates your guts. Yeah, they played her so well. The actress played her so well. So then, Mark is like, well, I hope I have things that I care about on the outside. And then Helly is like, well, you pretended to care about me pretty well. And Marcus is like, well, but you're easy to pretend to care about. And then Helly's like, well, yeah, you too. And then Milchick comes in and he turns the lights on. And he's like, guys, the party is over because I have to attend to a management issue. So I'll leave the food and I'll be back soon to escort Dylan to the party, the waffle party. So they're like, okay. And they're like, what's going on? Management issue, which is like obviously Miss Cobell being fired. Anyways, Mr. Milchick escorts Miss Cobell to the stairwell, and he takes her key card and hands her like a box of her things and then sends her out. And then back at MDR, Mark tells Dylan not to mess with the other departments. And then Helly is like reminding him of the process, and it's like, listen, it's meant to be done by 2 people, so just be careful, okay? And Dylan's like, yeah, it's fine, I'll be fine, don't worry. So then they give him the security key card and then also the directions for activating the overtime contingency. And Mark is like explaining to them like, hey, it's likely that we will wake up around people because our Audi could be doing like anything. So we'll probably wake up surrounded by people in the middle of doing something. It's important to find someone you think you can trust and just tell them everything. And they're like, yeah, because they don't know how long Dylan will be able to give them in the outside world, so they can't get distracted digging into their lives. So this is like the rules that they spread out, I guess, or it's like, yes, you can find out who you are, but like don't get too curious and like start going through things because your time is limited. So the most important thing is to like get the word out to someone you think you can trust, basically. So then they're like, all right, they all agree on it, and the mission is the priority. And then Mark S pulls out the self-help book by Rickon, the You Are, and he pulls out the drawer, and then he's like, the truth is, I kept it to myself and I've been reading from it. And then Dylan starts reciting words from the book, revealing that he also read it. So like they've all read the self-help book. I'll spread the word. What? I'll spread the word, basically. So Irving, Mark, and Helly wait at the elevator and they go in one by one. So Irving gets on the elevator and he goes like, well, it's time to find out what's for dinner. And then they like laugh a little bit. And then he goes up in the elevator, and then as the doors close, Helly starts talking to Mark, and she's like, do you think we're about to meet our spouses? Like, do you think we're married in the real world? And Mark S is like, maybe. And then Helly's like, it'd be so funny if like our Audis were actually married to each other. Or maybe they're like mid-argument even. And then she like puts in her key card next, and then she stops the door from closing, like the elevator doors from closing. And then she kisses him! She's like, oh, that's for in case, like, we don't come back. Or in case we do. And then she leaves. And she's like, good luck. And then Mark looks around the area, like, kind of disorientated. And then he gets on the elevator himself. And then Dylan is at MDR, like, reading the manual. And he's, like, reciting it to himself. He's like, okay. And then you press this button and then do this for, like, 5 minutes. He's like reading the manual, but then Milchick comes in, so like Dylan quickly like hides the manual, and Milchick is like, where'd everyone go? And then he assumes that like they just clocked out for their shift. And Dylan's like, okay, I'm coming. And then he follows Milchick after like taking a deep breath. He's like, it's time. So Mark leaves Lumen, and outside, you know, everyone's just leaving the building. And then meanwhile, Milchick escorts Dylan to the perpetuity wing, and he's like, okay, enjoy yourself, Dylan. And then he leaves him outside of Kira's home. So basically the celebration happens in the perpetuity wing, which, if you forgot, is like the little museum that they all went to with like all the wax figures, and there's like a replica of Kira's home. So that's why Milchick like leaves him in front of the home, because it's like, okay, now you get to go in and like kind of experience being the founder and like eat this waffle or whatever. So Dylan goes inside like the replica home, and Mr. Milchick's like, have fun. So Dylan goes into the bedroom and he finds a stack of waffles waiting for him. So he sits down and he's like about to eat them. And then the scene changes and it's Miss Cobell ranting about Natalie as she's driving, and it's so funny. She's like crashing out. She's like, Natalie, that little bitch. She's so fake. Her stupid ass smile. Like she's basically like that moment where you're like crashing out about that like HR person that's like fake and like ruins your life. They're like, oh, she doesn't even mean it. She's like complaining about Natalie and everything in her car, and she's like screaming and hitting like her car horn. Yeah, me and my coworkers shit talking the boss basically. She's like slamming everything, and then meanwhile, Dylan finishes his waffles, and then he sees on the like plate, it's instructions telling him to go to like the bed. So he goes to the bed and he sees a mask of Cure on it. It's like so weird, and he has to put on this mask of like this old guy, and then he sits down in a chair, and then he has like a whole little performance that he gets to watch where it's like 4 dancers dressed as like the 4 tempers or whatever come in and they like dance for him. I like forgot how to explain the 4 tempers, so I'm gonna search it out. The 4 tempers are discovered by Cure Egan as Woe, Frolic, Dread, and Malice. Whatever that means. Oh, so in the Cure Egan philosophy, every human soul possesses like one or like several of the 4 tempers, and he's basically like, these are bad things. Bad, we must get rid of them. Kind of like that. Egan a freak, yeah. So then the dance is performed for him, and then Miss Cobell gets home and she rages even more. She rips off the decorations on her home, and she has like this little shrine that she dedicates to Cure Egan that she like prays to, and she like destroys the shrine also. And then she was like ruining everything, and then all of a sudden she starts like hugging this like medical stuff equipment, and there was a hospital bracelet on it with the name like Charlotte Cobell. So you're like, did they find her in the psych ward? No, but it's just like really confusing, like new details, I suppose. And then the dancers finish dancing for Dylan, but then they turn around and the chair is empty, so Dylan's already gone. So Dylan is like running to the security room, and then all these things are happening around the same time. That's why I keep like switching between scene to scene, because like that's how they directed this episode, was just like parallel scenes playing out. So then it switches to Miss Cobell crying, sobbing on the floor, and then her doorbell rings. So she gets up and she goes to the door, she opens it, and it's Mark. And Mark, Audi, is like, hey, I'm headed to Devin and Rickon's party. Did you want to go? Devin wanted to know if you wanted to come. Miss Cobell is like, tears streaking down her face. Her eyes are red. And she's like, oh. She's like, Mark, yeah, I'm not feeling myself this evening. And Mark is like, okay, I understand. And he turns to leave. And she's like, well, maybe I'll drive my own car. And then I'll meet you guys there. So Mark is like, alright. And then he leaves to go to like this party that Rickon and Devin are putting on. Meanwhile, Irving on the outside goes home. He pets his dog and he gets his coffee. And he's obviously setting up to paint again, like as we saw him do in the beginning. And then in the other scene, Mark enters Devin and Rickon's party. So Rickon greets him and Rickon's like, hey, the reading's gonna start in 8 minutes. Do you have your book copy to read along? So you can just piece together that the party is for like Rickon's new book. He's like having a live reading of his self-help book. And he's like, oh, did you bring your copy? And Mark is like, oh no, I left it by the bed. And Rickon's like, oh, that's fine. You can share with someone else then. So then Devin comes over with her baby. And she's like, hey, Mark. Hey, bro. There's food. And it's really good. And then Rickon is like, oh, I found someone that is willing to share her copy of the book with you. And then Rickon's like starts to ask the person about the book. So it leaves Mark and Devin alone together. So then Mark and Devin start bantering together, or, you know, sibling talk. And is it Mark that brings it up? Says they should. Yeah, so then Mark is like, hey Devin, we need to talk. Do you mind if we talk later? I've been thinking about like doing a big life change. And Devin's like, oh, yeah, sure, of course. Like, yeah, we'll talk later. No worries, Mark. After the reading, maybe we can do it during break. So then Devin thanks Mark for coming, and then she leaves to like be the host. And the door opens, and Miss Cobell walks in, and then she hugs Devin, and Devin like welcomes her in and stuff like that. And then scene change. It's Dylan at the security room, and he puts in the key card, and it's all about to begin. And then another scene change. Irving finishes his painting, puts it aside with the other paintings of the dark hallway, and then starts a completely new one. So you're like, does he just paint this hallway all day? Anyways, scene change. Back at the reading party, Miss Cobell, or Miss Selvig, apologizes to Mark, and she's like, I'm sorry for earlier that you had to see me like that. I just had such a bad day at my job. And Mark is like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, you know, work just sucks. And then she's like, yeah, it does. And then scene change. Dylan's at the security place, and he uses his belt to like secure the door so that no one can come in. And then he pulls out his gift, and you find out that the gift he requested was like a block engraved with like all his coworkers. It's like a group photo. It's so sad. He asked for the gift was like this little block of like the whole team together, and then he puts it down in front of him, and then he pulls out the directions to get started on the overtime contingency. He starts working through the steps, and then all of this starts flashing like at the same time. So it flashes, and Irving is playing music and painting, and then it flashes to Dylan starting the process, giving like he has 19 seconds to open the circuit. And then it flashes to Miss Cobell asking Mark like, hey, I heard you talk about a life change with Dylan. Is there something going on in your life? And Mark is like, yeah, I was gonna talk to Devin about my job. I was thinking of quitting. And Miss Cobell's like, wait, really? And then it flashes to Dylan navigating the like overtime function buttons. And then it flashes back to Mark and he's saying like, yeah, I don't think I need severance anymore. Because he's like slowly come to deal with the grief of losing his wife. So he technically doesn't really need it anymore. So he's like, yeah, I'm considering quitting and like shutting down my severance. And then the scene flashes to Dylan. He's like navigating all the buttons and he's sweating balls. Like it made me nervous. I was like, he's not gonna make it. He's like flipping all these switches. And then the computer starts counting down and then Dylan like frantically looks for the next step to do. And then thank you for the posture check. And then it flashes back to Miss Cobell and then he's like, yes Mark, you should do it, you should quit, like get away from Lumen. Which is like kind of confusing because you're like, so she wants him to be well? Because she's encouraging him to leave. But then it's like she must have ulterior motives, right? The stream chat died? Wait, really? Oh my god, you're right. I can't see it anymore. It's not moving on the screen. It's okay. So then Miss Cobell's like, yes, Mark, you should do it. Get away from Lumen, just leave. And then the episode ends as Dylan reaches for two switches on the opposite sides of the room and he ends up flicking them both on. And then the episode ends with Mark like disassociating and then reawakening and you're like and then we're at the last episode. Dun dun dun. Let me see if I can fix the chat. I doubt I can. But yeah, if the chat stopped working, it's fine. I'll just read your stuff in OBS. Unless OBS also doesn't send your message. Oh, it's working now, I think. Testing. Yeah, it's working. Okay, cool. Hello, guys. Today we're just the voices in your head. Oh, wow. I can finally see them. The way Aki talks about shows is like those AI dubbers of movies and TV. Aki includes the title of the show. Yes! Oh my god. Movie recap here. I watched like every single video possible on movie recap while I was in school, like doing work. I know so much about like random movies that like I just don't know the titles of because they never say the title. So I just know a bunch of like random plot. Yes, that's me. Hello guys, movie recap here. Alright, we're on the last episode. It's titled The We Are, which references the self-help book, the You Are. Yeah. Like, goddamn, include the title. And then you have to look in the comments. Man. I like it when they give the characters widely different names in those videos. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. It was like kind of okay though, because I watched the movie recaps of movies that like I personally would never watch. Because I like think maybe the movie plot is like kind of stupid. I'll like watch the movie recap just like out of curiosity. And then after it finishes recapping, I like look up the Wikipedia and I read the plot a little bit and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then like that's it. Always gotta go to comments. Yup. Okay, last episode. So, we left off with Dylan finally activating the OTC, right? Overtime contingency. And Irving, Helly, and Mark all wake up at the same time. Like, they're like, whoa. And, wee. So, it's like mid-conversation. Remember, Mark was talking to Miss Cobell, but then he wakes up as Mark S. Can you imagine waking up as Mark S and the first face you see is Miss Cobell? You're like, am I at Lumen? Because he doesn't even know, like, they know each other in real life, you know? So Mark S wakes up and he sees Miss Cobell's face and he's like... but he tries to play it off because, you know, you can't give anything away. So Miss Cobell sees, like, the second he switches, and Miss Cobell is like, Mark, are you alright? And Mark, like, blinks a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I am. And Miss Cobell's like, oh, maybe you should talk to your sister, because it's an important decision, you know, that you're making. Changing bodies doesn't sound that bad. No way, you heard all, like, 9 episodes, and you're like, that's not that bad. No, think about your innie. And then, yeah, so Miss Cobell's like, yeah, you should go talk to your sister, you know, it's a really important decision. And Mark is like, yeah, my sister. Like, he's like, oh, like, you can see it in his head. He's like, oh, so I have a sister. And Miss Cobell's like, are you sure you're okay? You're acting weird. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. I just got a bit dizzy. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. So he starts walking to the bathroom. And Miss Cobell's like, that's the wrong way. The bathroom is the other way. So you're like, oh, she knows. She's on to him. It's over. So then he's like, oh, right, sorry. So he like walks to the bathroom. And then the scene changes to Irving waking up. And Irving is like mid-stroke on a painting of a dark hallway. And then he blinks and wakes up. And he like sees the painting of the hallway. And he's like, what? And then he looks around and he sees behind him is like a ton of paintings of the same exact hallway. And then Helly wakes up. And when Helly wakes up, she sees Natalie, which is the HR person, the board person. So Helly wakes up and she sees Natalie. And Natalie's like, Helly, how many drinks have you had? And Helly is like, oh, only one, the one I'm drinking right now. And then Natalie's like, okay, good, because you're on in 20. So then Natalie's like, I was just talking to the board earlier, and they're really grateful for this. And then Helly's like, okay. And then Helly runs into Gabby, the mom from the birthing retreat. And Natalie introduces Gabby to Helly. And Natalie says, hey Gabby, this is Helena Egan. You're like, wait a second! Oh my god! Dun dun dun! And then Helly is also like... She's like, holy shit! And then Gabby is like, oh my god, so good to meet you! And Helly is like, yeah, nice to meet you too. And it is so, like, weird because Helly looks around and it's all these, like, huge screens of her face on it. And it's, like, her quotes and, like, videos of her playing. And it's so, like, oh my god, it's so disorientating. And you can just see her, like, slowly realize. It's, like, the horror on her face. It's so awful. Yeah, it's so all weirdly connected. It's like, oh, no. They did so well connecting everything. So then we see in the security room, Dylan is like still holding both switches and he's like obviously in pain, like stretching himself, trying to hold both of it. And he's like, oh, this better be working. And then it goes back to Mark. And he closes himself in the bathroom and he's like, where am I? And he starts looking around. And then Devin comes into the bathroom and she's like, hey Mark, are you okay? Like, people are saying you're acting weird, so I came to check on you because they said you were really dizzy. And then she's like kind of just like joking around. And then she starts saying like, oh, also the person like sharing the book with you smells really weird. And you know, maybe you should have brought your own book. Because then you wouldn't have to share with her. And Mark is like, my own book? And Devin's like, yeah, because you left it, you know, at home. And then Mark looks down at her baby. And he goes... and I think he assumes that it's like... He assumes that Devin is his wife and that the baby is his. how's our baby? And Devin's like, oh, she's good. She's just hungry. And then Devin's like, ours? She's like, laughs a little bit. And she's like, well, you said you wanted to like talk to me about a life change, but do you mind waiting for a bit? I have to pump for the baby. So Mark is like, oh yeah, sure. And then he's just like, yeah, it's so awkward. He's trying his best. And then Irving turns off the music that's playing and puts the paint down, and he looks around and he finds his dog, and he like looks at the name tag and it says like Radar. And he's like, oh, I have a dog. It smiles. And goes back to Mark. So Mark comes across like 2 people that are like friends of his, but not really. They're more like friends of his sisters. And they're like, yeah, hey Mark, we were just discussing for your sister to like put off introducing her new baby until after tonight's event. And then Mark is like, my sister, baby, and then it clicks in his head. He's like, oh, that was my sister. It's like so awkward. And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then he walks away, and he's like thinking about everything that he's learned. And then the woman that's like supposed to share her book with him like walks up to him, and she's like, hey, I heard you want to share my book. And she's like, we have to be pretty close to read it at the same time. And then Mark is like, yeah, that's fine. And he's like trying to get her like away so he can investigate like other stuff. So Mark goes to Devin, and Devin like pulls him aside, and Devin's like, okay Mark, it's time for us to finally have that talk you wanted. You were talking about a life change, right? Let's go talk. So then they go off together, and then Mark is like in his head, he's like, okay, this is the person I can trust, because remember they said like find someone you think you can trust and tell them everything. So he's like, so this is my sister, so I can tell her. So then she's like, listen, he's like, listen, this is gonna sound really, really weird, but are we close? And Devin's like, close? She's like, yeah, we are. She's like, you're acting really strange. Like, and he's like, okay, good. And then, but before they can talk, Rickon is like, everyone, it's time for the reading to start. And then Devin is like, oh, well, we can talk during the break. It's okay. Sorry, Mark. And then she like leaves, and Mark is like, Mark's like, what do I do? And then, so the reading starts, and then Irving like walks around his space. He's like looking around, trying to like gauge who he is, and he sees several military medals hung up. So he's like, oh, I was in the military. He's like trying to get to know who he is. And then it cuts to Helly and Gabby, and Gabby's telling Helly about her kids. And then she's like, yeah, I just had my 3rd kid. I should have stopped at 2. And then they run into Gabby's husband, Angelo, the politician. And Gabby's like, oh, this is my husband, blah, blah, blah. And Natalie's like, oh, sorry, I need to go backstage. So Natalie leaves. And Helly is in awe that like Gabby and Angelo have 3 kids, because I mean, the Innies like know nothing about children, right? So Helly's just like, wow. And then Gabby's like, yeah, but I couldn't have done it without a little help. And she's referring to like severing that person like just to give birth. And she's like, yeah, I can't understand why people want to outlaw severance. And then Helly like nods, and she's like, yeah, like as a severed person, she's like, yeah, totally. Going through war crimes. She's like, yeah. So then cuts back to Irving. He's looking through his closet, and he finds a little chest of things. And then cuts back to Helly. Angelo tells Helly, he's like, I already know like what I was gonna vote for, but I think you can change some minds tonight with your speech, like your little, I don't know. She's like, I guess the Audi Helly is like trying to convince everyone to support Severance. So that whole thing, Angela's like, oh, I hope that you can change people's minds. And Helly's like, well, I'll try. And Angela's like, yeah, and thank your father when you see him. So you're like, father? It's all clicking in the head. And then it's back to Mark. And Mark goes into the living room and he sits with the lady that he's reading the book with. And he's like shocked because she hands him the book and the cover is the You Are. And he's like, oh! He's like, this is the self-help book that we've been reading. And he looks down and sees the like author, and Rickon has his like face plastered on the cover. So Mark is like, oh my god, because like all the innies are like huge fans of him, like his brother-in-law. So he's like, oh, it's Rickon. And then yeah, Rickon is like goes up to the front and he thanks everyone for coming. And he's like, I'm dedicating my reading to my baby Eleanor. And then Mark is like, whoa, Rickon is my brother-in-law. And then they like start reading. And Miss Cobell leans over Mark's shoulder, like all creepy like, and she's like, oh, can I also share the book with you guys? She thinks she's part of the team. Yeah, they do seem that way. Maybe it's like the opposites attract situation. And then back at Helly's place, Gabby and Angela wish Helly good luck, and Helly looks up and sees this like display of her telling a story about how she went through Severance and blah blah blah, like very sensational. And then Irving, back at the home, finds a key in his pocket, and he opens like the little chest that he found, and inside is a naval uniform and a picture labeled Dad. So you're like, what? And Irving like lifts the top out of the trunk. He's like looking through stuff, trying to figure out who the heck he is. And then back at Mark's place, Rickon continues reading and he finishes a chapter and he's like, alright guys, 7-minute reflection break before we come back. So then Mark's book partner is like, wow, that was so awesome and transformative and deep, so deep, self-help book, wow. And Miss Cobell's like, yeah, that is pretty good. And Devin comes over to Mark, and Devin's like, hey Mark, we can have that talk now. Just give me a few minutes and meet me in the baby's room, okay? And Mark is like, okay. And then Mark goes up to Rickon, and Rickon is like shaking. He's like really nervous. And Mark is like, hey, it's going great. Your book is brilliant. And Rickon is like, are you serious, Mark? Are you being sarcastic? And Mark is like, no. I mean it. Your book opened up a whole world for me. Mark is genuinely a fan, but like Mark S, the innie, he's like, yeah, my friends and I, like, we love it. Like, it opened up a whole entire new world for us. And Rickon's like, wow, Mark, really? I'm surprised. And then he's like, did you actually read the book? And Mark is like, yeah, I read the whole thing. And Mark is like, are we friends? And Rickon is like, what? Of course we're friends. I'm sorry if you ever felt different. Like, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel less than for being a severed person. I really regret that. I know you had to deal a lot with Gemma's passing on your own, like in your own way. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you weren't my friend. Like Rickon is so concerned. And Mark is like, wow, we're friends. And then, yeah. And then Rickon is like, look, I was scrolling through my photos the other day and I found a picture of all 4 of us on a hike together and it made me so emotional. Do you remember that? And Mark is like, oh, can I see the photo? Because Mark is like, I want to see who my wife is, right? Oh, or was, because at this point he like realizes his wife passed away. So, but before Rickon can show him the photo, he has to go do something else. So that he's like, oh, sorry, I'll talk to you later. He leaves. And you're like, no! You're like, just let him see that it's Miss Casey. And, yeah, you're like, no! And then Rickon leaves, and Mark runs into Miss Cobell. And Mark is like, oh hey, I'm just gonna go check on my sister. And Miss Cobell is like, Mark, you seemed a bit tense earlier when I hugged you. And Mark is like, I did? And she's like, yeah, you seemed to be just fine, but then you suddenly became like really tense when I hugged you. And you still look kind of tense. And Mark is like, oh, it's just parties, you know, like big gatherings. I'm not really comfortable. And she asks again, she's like, did you mean what you said about your plans? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I want to know more about it. Can you tell me? And he's like, oh, sorry, I'm on uncle duty. I'll be right back. So then he thanks her. And, oh my god, y'all, Mark slipped up so bad. So bad. So, he's like, I'll be right back. He's like, thank you. Bye, Miss Cobell. Mark! Generational fumble! I like kind of get it, because it's like, oh, like, why would he expect her to have a different name? But, oh my god. Yeah. When they did that, I was like, oh, Mark. And he's like, okay, bye, thanks, Miss Cobell. It's like instinct, I suppose. And Miss Cobell like, hold up. Anyways, back at Helly's place, she's looking at all the pictures of herself, like laughing and smiling, and MDR. And then it's like photos that Mr. Milchick took. So you find out that like all the photos that Mr. Milchick was taking of MDR, like during parties and stuff, was so that they could like display it for people on the outside world and be like, look how happy like all the workers are, like look how happy the severed people are, like here's a photo of them having a fruit party or like dance experience. Oh yeah, I can't imagine how they're gonna end season 2. And then she's like looking at all the photos, and then back at Mark's place, Mark tells Devin, he's like, listen, I really have to talk to you. And then it's like happening super fast, so like these scenes are like overlapping, so it's like really panicked feeling. Like Mark is like, I really have to talk to you, and the baby's like crying, and Devin's like, okay, I'll see you, just meet me in the room, I promise I'll like be right there, I'll just like, I need to hand my baby to someone first. So then he like goes to the room, and then Devin goes to Miss Cobell, and she's like, hey, Miss Selvig, do you mind holding my baby for a second while I talk to my brother? And Miss Cobell's like, yeah, sure. So she takes the baby and she starts like shushing the baby and like rocking it. It's like, shit's okay, baby. And then Devin runs back to Mark. And then meanwhile, Helly is watching a video of herself, but Helena, talking about being an Egan and how Lumen employees are her family. And it confused her to hear that as a child, but then she grew up and she understood what it meant. And then she's like talking about how she's like, oh, it was my decision to get the procedure to take a severed job. And it sounded awesome, you know, because I don't think Severance divides us. I think it brings us all together, which is like so BS, because you know how she really feels when she sent that video to Helly and she's like, you're not a person, I'm a person. Meanwhile, Miss Cobell takes the baby and like runs to her car and just starts driving, like booking it. And she's calling Mr. Milchick, but he's not picking up. And she's like, damn it, pick up! And she's driving to Lumen with and then meanwhile, Irving finds several like newspaper clippings about Severance, and then he finds a list of severed employees of handwritten notes. And he finds himself on the list of names, and he flips through it and he's trying to find Bert's name. And he finds a chest with so in the chest that he's looking through, there's a map of Cure, like he already has a map for some reason. It's all very confusing. And then in it, he also finds like Bert's house. And then he finds like his own like place on a piece of mail. And then he starts using like these little bits to map out the route from his place to Bert's house. And it's really confusing because it's like, why does he have all of these things, right? But they don't go into that yet. So while that's happening, Helly goes to the bathroom at the gala, and her father, James Egan, comes in after her. And he's like, oh, you look so nice. How do you feel? Are you still in pain? And she's like, oh, no. And then he's like, I cried when I found out that your innie tried to kill you. Thank you for going through Severance anyways. Your grandfather would like cherish you so much for it. One day, you'll sit with me at my revolving. And he's like, do you feel well? And she's like, yeah, I just, the drink I had, it's kind of getting to me. And then he's like, well, will you be okay for the speech? And she's like, yeah, I'll be fine. And then he's like, oh, do you remember when I brought home the first chip prototype to show you? The one with green and blue lights? You told me it was so pretty and everyone in the world should get one. And they will. He's like, everyone in the world will get a Severance chip because of you. And we'll all be Kira's children. And Helly is listening to this like, oh, that's great. And then Natalie comes in and Natalie's like, Helly, it's time for you to get on stage. And then Helly's like, okay. And then she starts making her way onto the stage. And then, meanwhile, Irving grabs his keys and his coat and map, and then he leaves. And he starts the car and he just starts like driving, trying to figure out the road as he's driving. And then back at Mark's place, Devin asks Mark to like promise he's not messing with her. And she's like, you're not joking, right? This isn't a prank. And Mark is like, no, it's not. So you can assume that he already told her like everything about Lumen that he knows of. And of the Severance. And he's like, we need to find people and send people down there to inspect like every inch of that floor. And Devin is like, wow, that's crazy because your Audi has also been trying to figure out what Lumen does and what your job is. And then Mark S. Innie is like, I just want to know why Mark, like my Audi, put me in there. And Devin is like, well, the truth is it's because you had a wife and you lost her in a tragic accident before you started working at Lumen. And, and she's like explaining everything. And then Mark is like, oh, okay, I see, that's sad. And Devin's like, yeah, you tried to keep teaching, but it was a huge disaster. You just couldn't focus, like it was destroying you. So you thought that a severed pain would at least spare like your innie from that severed, what did I say? She was like, you were hoping that at least like having the severed job or like a severed version of yourself would spare you from the pain somehow. Even though it's like not actually him not feeling pain. I guess it's the whole idea of like at least there's a version of me that won't feel that grief, I suppose. But yeah. And then Mark is like, well, Gemma is a really nice name. And then Devin's like, yeah, you were all of us were super close. Gemma was wonderful. Like, she was an amazing person. And she made you amazing too. Like, she made you wonderful. She brought out all your best sides. And it's like a really sad conversation. And then back with Irving. So Irving is driving to Bert's place. And Miss Cobell drives past him in the opposite direction. It's like that scene from Umbrella Academy where like the two siblings drive past each other. But that's Irving and Miss Cobell, but like they didn't see each other. So they just drive past each other. And she finally like gets across to Milchick. Milchick picks up the phone, and Mr. Milchick is like, they told me I wasn't allowed to talk to you anymore. And Miss Cobell's like, the OTC was activated. The overtime contingency, it's been switched on. And Mr. Milchick is like, what? What do you mean? And Miss Cobell's like, it's Mark. It's his innie. It's not his outie. I just spoke with him and he called me Miss Cobell. And she's like, he's acting weird. It's the OTC. And then Mr. Milchick is like, oh shit, because he's like, Helly is at the freaking gala right now and she's about to give a speech. So he's like, oh no. And then Miss Cobell's like, don't worry, I'll fix this. I'll fix it. Don't worry, I'll go to the gala. You go to the security office to stop Dylan. And then Mr. Milchick is like, okay. So Mr. Milchick starts running to the office. He's like booking it. He's trying to open the door, but he can't because Dylan tied it with his belt. So Mr. Milchick is like, Dylan, G, open the door. And Dylan is like, no, fuck you. And Dylan's like still using the switches. And then meanwhile, Devin's with Mark, and Devin is like, you know what? Rickon knows a ton of high-end journalists here. They might be better than the police because Lumen probably has their hands on the police too. We have to be careful who we talk to about this. And then Mark is like, listen, I don't know how much time I have left, okay? And Devin realizes it's like, oh, it's because like his bosses are gonna find out and they're gonna like shut this whole operation down. And then Mark is like, oh yeah, why is my boss here? And Devin's like, what? And Mark is like, yeah, my boss, Miss Cobell, she's here. Do you guys know her? And then she's like, your boss? And he's like, yeah, the lady with the white hair. And Devin is like, you mean Miss Selvig? And then Mark is like, is that her name? And then Devin's like freaking out because Devin's like, oh my gosh, you have a freaking baby! So Devin like runs out of the room, and the scene cuts and Natalie is leading Helly to the stage. And then the scene cuts and Irving is driving to Bert's place. And then the scene cuts to Mr. Milchick, and he's cutting through Dylan's belt. He's, come on, Dylan, why are you doing this? You were the refiner of the quarter. Didn't you enjoy your waffle party? You had such a great time. Why are you doing this? Come on, open the door. If you open the door, I'll tell you more facts about your outside self. And Dylan's like, no. And then Devin interrupts Rickon's reading. He's like mid-reading. And Devin is like, is Miss Selvig here? She has my baby. She has Eleanor. And Rickon is like, what? So they all start looking for the baby. And then Devin goes outside and sees that Mrs. Selvig's like car is gone. So Devin's like, oh my gosh, she took my baby. And then they like go back inside because they're like, what if she like left the baby somewhere here? And then they're like looking everywhere. And then the scene cuts and Irving reaches Bert's house. And then the scene cuts to Mr. Milchick. And he's like, come on, I can still get you back in time for the show at Kira's place, you know? I'll get you any perk you want. Do you want another music dance experience? Like, do you want another waffle party? I'll give you another reward. Even rewards that you don't even know about. And he starts to like list all these rewards that Lumen gives that like they've never experienced. I'm just trying to bribe him. And Dylan is like, I don't care about all these rewards. I don't want to know about them. Do you know what I do want to know about? I want to remember my kid being born. Like, I want to remember watching them grow up. And then Mr. Milchick, out of desperation, he's like, you have 2 other kids. I'll tell you all about them if you just open the door. And then, scene cuts to Miss Cobell driving to the gala. And she leaves her car out front. And then she, like, runs inside. And then the event coordinator is telling Natalie, it's like, okay, we're gonna start in 2 minutes. Good luck, Helly. And Natalie is like, you got this. Just stick to your talking points. And then Helly starts walking up onto the stage. And then Irving approaches the house. He's like watching through the window and he sees Bert. And he like gets really, really happy. And then another person comes into view. Bert is married. In the outside world, it's over. And then Irving's like face drops And he's like so shocked and sad. It's so sad. Tragic old man Yowie. And then back at the reading party, they are checking all the rooms. The baby's not in the baby room. And then Mark ends up opening one of the doors and he finds the baby in her car seat crying. So they're like, oh, thank God, like she didn't take her. But it's like kind of assumed that like she probably was planning to because she was like in the car seat. Like the little, you know, the ones that babies use. So yeah, they pick up the baby and they're like, oh, don't worry. And then she leaves the room. And then Mark stays in the room that he opens and he notices photos on the table. So he starts walking over to the photos. And then meanwhile, the scene cuts to Milchick still like trying to bribe Dylan. And then it cuts back to Natalie talking about Severance. She's like introducing it. And at the edge of the stage, as Helly is about to go on, Miss Cobell runs up to her and grabs her. And Miss Cobell's like, I know it's you, Helliar. And then Helly is like, you can't do anything to me. I'm going to kill your entire company. And then Miss Cobell is like, if you do this, your friends are gonna suffer. Like, we're gonna make sure they suffer so bad, you'll never want to do anything like this ever again. And you will be gone. I'll make you disappear, but I'll keep the rest of them alive. And I'll make them suffer pain. Like, it's like, I'll keep them alive and in pain, but you will be gone. You will be wiped from existence like you never existed. I'm gonna kill you. And then the event coordinator comes to get Helly and pulls her away from Miss Cobell. So then Helly goes up on the stage. And then all these scenes start jumping back and forth, okay? So we jump. Irving is watching Bert and his husband. Mark pulls out a picture and he sees that Gemma has the same face as Miss Casey. And then Helly steps out onto the stage. Irving walks up to Bert's house. Milchick still cutting the belt. Mark runs into the living room calling for Devin. And he's like, Devin. And then Helly goes on stage, introduces herself as the Emmy. And she's like, it's all a lie. Everything they said about Severance is a lie. Like, we're suffering. They're torturing us. And then Irving starts knocking on the door and calling for Bert. And he's like distraught. He's like sobbing. It's so sad to watch. And then Helly is like, we're not happy. We're miserable. Lumen is torturing us in there. It's inhumane, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, we're all prisoners. Milchick finally gets through the door and he runs at Dylan. And Mark rushes to his sister and he starts screaming, like, she's alive! And then Milchick tackles Dylan and the whole thing shuts down. And that's the finale. Honestly, the last part where Mark is screaming, like, she's alive, I was like, oh my god. Crazy. This recap took 3 hours. It actually took 6 hours. I did episode 1 to 5 yesterday. Not yesterday, Monday. Yeah. Okay. One of my favorite shows is Hannibal, and that one took a week. That one took me a week to finish. Yeah, there's so much content. And I'm gonna obviously wait for season 2 to finish before I recap season 2, but yeah. Don't worry, guys. Clap, 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 clap. That ending, though, crazy. Wow. Oh, the actors are phenomenal. Like, I think I only knew Mark, Dylan, and Irving's actors before I watched Severance. I recognized them. PD's actor, like, kind of looks familiar, but I didn't remember. I only knew Mark from The Good Place. Oh, was he in The Good Place? Oh, he was! Okay, his big role is in Parks and Rec. He's like one of the main people. But yeah, it's so good. Have you watched their the Hot Ones interview between Mark and Miss Cobell's actors? It's so funny. That sounds fun. Should we all watch it together? Never mind, it's like 20 minutes long. I'll just send the link. But you guys gotta watch this because Miss Cobell's actress is so good. Because you watch this video and like there is no similarity between them at all. It's so good. Like I was like, what? It's such a different person. School principal vibes. Real. Okay, that's the video. Yeah, go Spring in his actor. Yeah, but I loved it. Oh, did you see they did this whole pop-up, like, what's the word? Installation? It's like an art installation. I should play Mirror. I think you'll love it. Yeah, everyone says that. I do have to get on Mirror. They did like a pop-up installation in Grand Central Terminal. So it was a glass, like, cage with the cubicles inside. And then, like, the actual actors and actresses were, like, in the Grand Central Terminal. It's in New York City. And they were, like, in the glass, like, cube. And they were just, like, acting in there. And then everybody was, like, taking pictures. It was pretty cool. I can show you guys this. Grand Central. I forgot where it was for a second, even though I just said it. I was like, where was this? Okay, let me share the screen. It was so cool though. And apparently they were there for like 6 hours or something. And it was during rush hour, so it was like when there was the most amount of people like commuting. And they did this for season 2 promo. I watched like a video someone else recorded, like just on their own phone, and they were like laughing because at some point Miss Cobell walks into the thing and she starts scolding all of them, and Mr. Milchick looks like really scared. The person recording was like, oh my god, look at Mr. Milchick's face right now. Let's see, outside of crash out to manage. Thank you kindly for streaming myself. Oh no, not a crash out. Good lucky me. Honestly, fair. I've been crashing out the past like week, and I'm only okay right now because I'm yapping about Severance. Good lucky me. I hope everything gets better somehow. Browser. Where's my YouTube? Yeah, I'm putting all my energy into this. Okay. YouTube. The voices. There we go. Okay, so it was like set up. And it was so cool. So they set this up. And it was just like this little like this little glass cage. And then like they even had like the screens and stuff. Like you can genuinely interact with the files. And then everybody was like walking in, and it was so cool. And they just did this for like 6 hours. Oh, it was unplanned in terms of like no one knew it was gonna happen. Yeah, and then they just like did this inside. Mr. Milchick! I think it was 6 hours. I have to double check. But yeah, it's so cool. And they just stayed in there for so long. Mr. Milchick just like stood there watching them. Oh my god, the ball pass. Yeah, this is so cool though. Let's see if there's a better angle. Yeah, this is just like someone else recording it. And then there's like, they have every single detail, like down to all the props they used. His little block portrait is so funny. And then, what's it? Here. So they were just there like the whole day. And then it ended with Miss Cobell, or was it Miss Milton? I think it was Miss Cobell escorting Mark to like the break room. It was really cool. No, was it Milchick? Yeah, so it ends with Milchick escorting Mark to the break room, and they like walk away together. He's being tortured! Yeah, and then they walk away. Isn't that so cool though? It's also so smart. Like such a smart thing to do to advertise. Anyways, that's the end of the recap. Let me see who's live right now. Friday, Saturday stream we'll be back to Yakuza Infinite Wealth. So wait, what day is it Saturday? Okay, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday is like 2 of my friends' birthday streams. So on Saturday, I might have to... Actually, no. My call-in is after the stream, so it's fine. I think I might have to compromise Monday's stream, but that's about it. I'll see. But yeah. Yakuza! You like Yakuza? I'm playing Infinite Wealth right now. I'm watching this tonight. Luckily, I have Apple TV. Let's go! I hope you love it. I mean, you saw the dance experience, so I'm sure you'll love it. Oh, who's live right now? My friend. He's playing Marvel Rivals. Okay, we're gonna raid Tex. I think it's his first stream back in like forever. So, yeah. Just say hi to him. And, yep. Thank you for the great stream. Thank you guys for joining. I'm so glad like anyone wanted to hear this at all. I was like, I have to tell people about this. I have to spread the word. I'll spread the word. But yeah. Alright, I'm gonna send you guys off to Tex. Say hello to him. And hope you all have a great day. Great night. Sleep well. Take care. Have a nice one. Too adorable. Is that what my yapping streams give off? Thank you. And hey, we didn't have some random person disrupt this time. It was kind of funny though. Like my Monday stream when that person kept like disrupting, but like I just really wanted to finish the recap, so I kind of like ignored them and just kept going. I was like, oh wow, that's bad. Anyways, so then Mark S. I was like, I want to finish this recap so bad. I can't deal with this like chatter right now. I ignored him too. Yeah, it's best to just ignore them because it's like giving the attention always makes it worse anyway, so I'm glad we all just like continued on with the yapping. And yeah, take care. I'm glad I got you totally hooked. I hope that's how all my Yap streams are like. Take care, guys. I'll see you Friday for Yakuza. In the meantime, yeah. Take care of yourself. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.